The Green Ranger, not the Ranger we're all familiar with from the live action series though. This is a new version of the Green Ranger. In the comic, instead of Tommy becoming the White Ranger, thereby replacing Green, Tommy dies and is rescued. A Green Ranger soon appears, taking out the panda monster the team had combined forces to take on single-handedly. As it turns out, Billy had been assisting Grace Sterling, the head of a tech company called Promethea, to power up the dragon power turns during the Rangers' battle with a superpowered Chaos Putty before revealing himself to be a fellow student at Angel Grove, Matt Cook. Matt was already a strong kid before becoming the Green Ranger, having been captured by Rita Repulsa and withstanding heroics, saving a kid from, being crushed by fallen rubble before being teleported to Promethea for Grace to offer him this brand new position as a Ranger. He's got an Ranger and Green Ranger fighting alongside each other with their respective Zords.
Coming in at number 9 is Doggy Kruger. I'm leading with my favorite here. Anubis Doggy Kruger is one of the most memorable characters in the Power Rangers world, mostly because he is a literal blue dog-like alien, but also because he's freaking cool. He still commands massive respect from the human Rangers as the chief of the Power Rangers SPD, Space Patrol Delta, serving as their commander on Earth. He has extremely outstanding leadership skills and a dedication to seeing the SPD Rangers succeed and remain safe at any cost. Instead of possessing a whole whack of gadgets and weapons, the Shadow Ranger's Galaxy single sword style is just so far and above anything that his opponents can come up with that it makes him one of the strongest Rangers in the Power Rangers universe on his own. It has even given him the moniker of Hell's Guard Dog. How awesome is that?
The White Ranger, Tommy Oliver. It was only a matter of time before Tommy was mentioned, right? Tommy is probably the most famous Ranger ever. He was the Green Ranger and White Ranger, plus several others in the live action series. An absolute legend of the franchise. But back to the comic. When Tommy is seemingly taken out by Lord Drakon after being stabbed through the back with Saba, the Rangers mourn his death, but when Drakon sent the Ranger Slayer back in time to eliminate the Rangers, she breaks free of his influence and ends up changing the past version of Tommy's fate for the better, piercing him with a green crystal, becoming this entity that haunts Drakon, eventually giving Tommy enough power to resurrect himself. After the Shattered Grid arc, Tommy reappears now as the White Ranger. Ranger is just awesome. He's got the baddest Zord, the coolest sword, and Saba that can talk. And it's Tommy Oliver. He kicks butt. What else can I say?
Number 7, Ranger Slayer. Kimberly Hart was the original Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger, and the Ranger that all the other guys in school had a crush on. But she is straight up a total badass. But for this point on the list, I want to talk about the Kimberly Hart of a different reality. In said alternate reality, the world of the Coinless, this version of Kimberly became a deadly ranger named the Rare. Kimberly piloted the Grave Zord and was also the leader of the Promethea Rangers team, which included another powerful ranger, Magna Defender. She also wielded the bow / Drakon in the new timeline.
Alright, the Death Ranger. This is one of the coolest Rangers I've ever seen. I always wanted there to be stuff like this in Power Rangers, like when I was a kid. So the Death Ranger was sealed away by the original Omega Rangers, but then Andros, the in-space Red Ranger, freed it, cutting a deal with the Death Ranger to avenge those responsible for the destruction of his planet in exchange for its freedom. Big so powerful is its ability to switch host bodies. You can destroy the body, but his essence still remains. He'll just move on to find another host to take on. When Andros managed to turn it into its Zord instead, a sentient Zord. Pretty cool. More like a transformer. In order to take it out, for now that is.
Number 5, Merrick Balatin. There is a bit of a trend of the 6th Ranger being the most powerful of whoever the respective Ranger team is. These 6th Rangers have been able to take down foes by themselves that even a full team of 5 Rangers couldn't take on. One of my favorite 6th Rangers would have from the mythical nation of Animarium before he was corrupted by the wolf mask that he used to save his nation. He then became the monster known as Zen Aku. As Zen Aku, he was one of the most imposing enemies that the Wild Force Rangers ever faced, but luckily for all of us, he eventually purged the evil from within himself and became the Lunar Wolf Ranger for the team. Merrick got access to the Predazord, a combo Zord that had the Wolf, Hammerhead Shark, and Alligator Zords. Also, I have to tell you about his main weapon, the Lunar Q, as in Pool Q. It could be a saber, a sniper, to say the least. It's also worth noting that being the Lunar Wolf, he stayed as a bit of a loner, being all brooding and cool, never fully integrating with the team of Rangers. You could even say that he was a, lone wolf. Ooh, wordplay, nice.
The Omega Rangers are the biggest Rangers in existence, fighting in space against evil threats. The Omega Rangers lay dormant for many years, but became active again when 3 of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Jason, Zack, and Trini, took the mantles after leaving the original team, along with Kia being the blue Omega Ranger, who would soon turn on them. It's cool that they took that original departure of those cast members and MMPR and made it part of the story in like a really cool way. With the whole peace conference thing just being a cover-up for a much cooler mission. Being recruited by the Blue Emissary to become the Omega Rangers and protect these Rangers would prove to be some of the universe's most powerful heroes, but when the Death Ranger possessed them, it took the combined might of Andros, the MMPR team, Archon, Kevor, and Journey to take them on.
Number 3, Jason Lee Scott. Jason Lee Scott is also one of the most powerful Rangers throughout all of Power Rangers media. He led the original team of Mighty Morphin Rangers against Rita Repulsa and many other foes. He took down a small army of monsters by himself, and he would even return against Lord Drakon's forces in a battle to save the entire Power Rangers multi-chip traits that made him the perfect choice to become the Red Ranger. He was even able to defeat Tommy, one of the strongest Rangers in combat, when he was brainwashed by Rita Repulsa. He is often considered by fans to be the best Red Ranger and the best Power Ranger ever, and in a contest run by ABC Family in 2004, Jason was voted the best Power Ranger of all time, but we know for a fact there's at least someone stronger than him.
The Emissaries. The Emissaries are these like ancient warriors that represent the Morphin Masters, an ancient civilization dedicated to studying blue, and what's cool about them is that they don't really have one solid form. They're constantly phased. Oh, that's Ninja Storm Red, or like cool, that's Time Force Blue, you know? They used to be, you know, Rangers themselves, the Squadron Rangers, but during their battle with Dark Spectre, they essentially became conduits of the grid, just letting its power consume them, and they became basically one with it. Now becoming these like kind of celestial beings. The Emissaries are supremely powerful guardians of the grid that exist outside of the realm of time and space, observing events across time and watching over the various Ranger teams that fight to protect their worlds.
Is without a doubt the Green Ranger Tommy, who, as we said before, becomes the White Ranger. But who is the most powerful Ranger ever? Tommy, but not the regular Tommy. It's the insanely powerful Lord Drakon. Instead of breaking his connection to Rita Repulsa, this universe's Tommy stuck with her. This guy was able to breach the Morphin grid itself, which he did by killing at least one Ranger on every team throughout the multiverse, a new Earth where he was basically like Superman. Also, he looks super cool. Combining both the Green Ranger and the White Ranger looks with gold accents, it's Gabella. A hell of a way to take the greatest Ranger and make him the most despicable.
Number 10, Bulk and Skull, Purple and Orange Rangers. That's right! Bulk and Skull actually end up becoming Power Rangers as well in the comics. In the show and in the comics, they are both known as being rivals of the other kids at the school, mistreating and picking on the Power Rangers. Massive fans of the Power Rangers, kinda like the relationship Flash Thompson had with Peter Parker and his superhero identity of Spider-Man earlier on in the comics. And just like Flash, they also become heroes. Well, at least for a time. And over time they definitely become allies to the Power Rangers, so you know, they become better people as time goes on. Yay! They both helped Zordon with a mission when the Power Rangers were trapped. He made them temporary Rangers by giving them each extremely rare power coins. However, Alpha removes their memories of this incident afterwards, so they themselves do not remember their time on this mission as the Purple and Orange Rangers. Pretty sad considering how much they love the Power Rangers.
Number 9, Nick Russell, the Red Mystic Force Ranger. The light that would save the world from darkness, aka the most powerful wizard of all time. But then he had this really cool, not battleizer, but it technically acted as one. I'm a little fuzzy on how exactly that works, but he has his Red Dragonfire Ranger form, which is when he straight up merges with the dragon Fireheart. That sentence I just said sounds so cool. Wielding the power of fire itself, being the leader of the Mystic Force Rangers and the son of Leanbow, Nick Russell is super cool and very powerful. Unfortunately, in the comics he doesn't get many chances to really display his power. He and the other Mystic Force Rangers were split off into their own pocket universe, then later he receives Zordon's call through the Morphin Grid and is all the way in the back of a panel of a bunch of other powerful Rangers who rally to Zordon's pocket dimension led by Eric Myers, the Quantum Ranger, for a last stand against Lord Drakon. Then him and the other Mystic Rangers pilot the Titan Megazord during the battle on the moon of the World of the Coinless against Drakon and his Ranger sentries. And at number 8 as well is time as a villain, which means he has to have enough power to make him a threat. That's why pretty much all of the anti-hero, once a villain Rangers are kind of OP. Trent specifically has a bunch of abilities that are almost rude. He had the ability of super speed and camouflage, which were the abilities of the Red Ranger and Black Ranger, and he arguably used them way better than those Rangers did. But on top of that, he wielded not one, but 2 Zords, the Dragozord and the Stegozord. Most people can't say that for themselves. Also, having 2 Zords, he even had the capability to combine the 2 of these really powerful Zords into a Megazord that he could pilot all by his lonesome. The Rangers were extremely lucky they were able to sway him over to their side as the White Dino Thunder Ranger, because with his advantages, he may have caused the end for them. Also, I just gotta say his design and his Super Dino Mode design are just soaked into their own pocket universe, and at the end of the arc are restored back to their timeline, but we have to at least mention this awesome 6th Ranger.
Number 7. Kimberly Hart, the Pink Ranger. Kimberly Ann Hart, or just Kimberly Hart in some iterations, is one of the first main Rangers to appear, and the same is true of her in the comics. Kimberly was the first Pink Ranger, and while we talked about an alternate version of Kimberly known as Ranger Slayer from the World of the Coinless reality from the comics, we did not talk about her main reality counterpart, who, like her alternate, is also super powerful and committed to fighting against the forces of evil and helping to protect innocent people and of course her friends. In the main continuity, Kimberly is not coinless, instead getting her power from the Pterodactyl Power Coin given to her by Zordon. To match it, she can also call on the Pterodactyl Dinozord. She typically is best known for fighting with her power bow, but also possesses her Blade Blaster as well. Kimberly was also one of my favorite Rangers growing up from the 90s series. I even used to have a little plush doll version of her that I would actually take everywhere with me, and now I'm wondering if she's also the reason that I generally like playing as like a ranger, like the class in games, and that I always prefer to use a bow, which is a thing.
Number 6. Magna Defender. I don't care if you don't count him as a Ranger, the Magna Defender is one of the best characters from Lost Galaxy. He has the best aesthetic in terms of Rangers, and he has the coolest backstory, making him an awesome anti-hero in the Power Rangers canon. The Magna Defender fought in a battle that occurred over 3,000 years ago. The Magna Defender's homeworld was attacked and overrun by Scorpius and his monsters, with his son Zyka used as a shield when he tried to attack Scorpius and save his father. So, of course, the Magna Defender swore revenge for both his son and their planet. Magna Defender is ruthless and will fight through and have a morpher or a transformation. Instead, he possessed the body of Mike Corbett, the Red Ranger's brother, and used him to try and get the revenge that he wanted. But he left Mike's body and also left Mike with the power of the Magna Defender. Without a morpher or any transformation to rely on, he also wields the Taurozord. Both of these are pretty darn powerful. He was also in that last battle against Drakon, and he essentially served as the 6th Ranger for the Lost Galaxy Rangers, so I'm calling him a Ranger. Damn it, you can't stop me.
Number 5. Billy Cranston, and he is also part of the original team of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, both in the show and in the comics. However, in the comics, a cool thing is that he's not really alone when it comes to this. In fact, while Billy is one of the most ingenious of the group, other Rangers also help him with his more intellectual projects and pursuits. Namely, I've seen Trini, the Yellow Ranger, help him multiple times, and although they were also close in the show, I feel like they're like even closer in the comics. Billy was chosen to become the Blue Ranger thanks to his patience and his smarts. Among his friends, both of these traits are celebrated. Billy was given the Triceratops Power Coin by Zordon, and to go with it, also pilots the Triceratops Dinozord. As time goes on, Billy becomes more confident and sure of himself, although initially he struggles to do so, as his smarts often seem to creep, though. He grows so much throughout his time as a Power Ranger.
And at number 4 is Orion, the Super Megaforce Silver Ranger. Okay, some people may be a little annoyed by Orion's inclusion here, some might not. And it all comes down to an incredibly divisive power that this guy possesses. As most of you might know, the 6th Ranger in Power Rangers media is almost always the most powerful one. They can usually take on threats on their own that the team can't even handle together. Orion, who became the Super Megaforce Silver Ranger after the 6th Ranger key landed on his planet, had access to the Super Megaforce Gold form, which gave him the abilities of all 15 6th Rangers. Using a fused together Ranger key, Orion was able to access the power of 6, amping him up to incredibly ridiculous levels of powerful and giving him a super thick armor that has little images of all 15 Rangers' helmets on the front. It does look a little silly, I totally will admit that, and the power of 6 seemed a little silly to a lot of people as well, but given the lore with the grid and all that, it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility. Too much fighting, it was more just cool to just see him there. But at one point in time, he had the ability to be more powerful than almost all other Rangers, and that makes him super cool.
Number 3. Andros, Red Solar Ranger. Andros is the Red Space Ranger or Red Solar Ranger. In the show, he has not just skills as a fighter, but also has actual superpowers, telekinetic ones that are typical of those who also live out on KO-35, a human colony located in outer space. Andros was also basically like the Silver Surfer with a drill sword. He could use his Galaxy Glider to fly through space, and has a Spiral Saber, which is a sword that's also like a drill, and which could be combined with his laser gun known as his Astro Blaster to make a souped up Spiral Saber, which is pretty cool. Like many others in the comics, Andros' story point, Andros fights to protect his sister after Astronema is defeated and she becomes free of her evil influence. We later learn that Charon and Astronema, while once the same person, have been split in twain, with Astronema becoming her own entity, freeing Charon from the guilt of Astronema's cruel and evil crimes. However, this turns out to be a genius plot of Andros's to both free his sister and give the people who Astronema hurt what they wanted most: revenge. He created a hard light hologram of Astronema in order to make the people of the court think that she was a separate entity, which they then got to defeat, and that also freed Charon from punishment, although she was not as happy about that. She was like, hey, let me go to jail or be killed.
And in at number 2, the Quantum Ranger Eric Myers. Before becoming a Ranger, Eric Myers was actually a soldier working for the for-profit militant group called the Silver Time Force Rangers 6th Ranger, which, as we know, makes him powerful automatically. And while he affiliated with the Time Force Rangers, he ultimately stood a bit more alone with one of the best arsenals and Zords in the franchise, the Quantosaurus Rex Zord. The Q-Rex doesn't have a cockpit for a Ranger, but it's controlled through voice command on the Quantum Morpher. The Q-Rex was awesome, and he used quantum energy to put him ahead of most other Rangers, but in the comics, he really got some time to shine, leading the group of assembled and reunited Rangers to appear outside of the command center for that famous last fight against Lord Drakon. Seeing him standing there in front of this big group of wildly powerful Rangers, it's great. He may be a bit of a jerk with a soft, warm underbelly, but I think it's because he's awesome and powerful enough to back it up.
Number 1. The Morphonaut, also known as the Phantom Ranger. This Ranger was a mysterious figure whose identity was unrevealed. They appeared in both the Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Turbo shows. The Phantom Ranger hailed from the same homeworld as Zordon, known as Eltar. In the comics, we learned that before he was known as the Phantom Ranger, this Ranger had a different alias, the Morphonaut. As the Morphonaut over 10,000 years ago in the past, he was trapped inside the Morphin Grid as a preventative measure to protect others from the evil that lurked around its perimeters. Hundreds of years in the past, the Morphonaut ended up being freed from the Morphin Grid and would go on to help the Squadron Rangers in their fight against the Dark Spectre. Eventually, the Morphonaut became corrupted by Dark Spectre, which he chose to do in order to protect the Squadron Rangers. His armor turned black, and although the Squadron Rangers would later defeat Dark Spectre, freeing the Morphonaut from their influence, the Morphonaut's armor would remain black, and they would take on the name of Phantom Ranger in their new form.
Coming in at number 10 is Carter Grayson. Grayson? Yes, but no relation to Nightwing, don't worry. No, Carter Grayson was Mariner Bay's best firefighter, saving people and for some reason using his awesome martial arts before he even became the Red Lightspeed Rescue Ranger. He is incredibly practical, using whatever tools he has on hand to do the job, like when he drove the Lightspeed Rescue Rover into battle crushing a monster. He's clearly very capable as well, as he has only ever resorted to using his Battleizer 3 times in total in the show. In the comics, during Shattered Grid, he was the only one of the LSR Rangers to survive Drakon's attack, and he teamed up with Jen Scott, Kimberly Hart, and the other surviving Solar Rangers, doing their best to help bring the fight back to Drakon, eventually resulting in the rewriting of reality. But he didn't really have anything to do with that, he just fought Drakon's forces on the moon alongside the other Rangers, which is still cool. Number 9. Robert James. RJ has the honor of being the very first Purple Ranger, and he was also the very laid-back mentor to the Power Rangers Jungle Fury. He learned a technique known as the swoop technique, which is fun to say, but also gave him the curious ability to fight blind. But he also had an incredibly powerful bond with the wolf animal spirit, the Violet Wolf Ranger Zord and the Wolf Pride Megazord. With the spirit, he can perform the Wolf Beam and the Energy Strike attacks using dark purple energy to attack his enemies. The Energy Strike was able to take down Camille with one hit. Now, while he isn't really the leader of the Ranger team, he gives a great level of support to the team and he is their mentor. When Lord Drakon attacked Jungle Karma Pizza, RJ was rescued by Jen Scotts and Kimberly Hart of the Coinless, combining his animal spirit with other Zords. In at number 8 is Trey of Triforia. Trey here is the first Gold Ranger introduced in Power Rangers Zeo. He uses his Zord, Pyramidus, which can fly into space and can shoot these sweet golden lightning bolts. And by combining with the Zeo Megazord and the Red Zord in Rangers Zeo, he weirdly even gets split into 3 at one point: Trey of Courage, Trey of Heart, and Trey of Wisdom. It's weird. In the comics though, he rallies and has his morpher upgraded by Dr. K. Trey also wields the Golden Power Staff, which is both hilarious and I kinda love it. I kinda support that. Good job. But in at number 7 is Antonio Garcia, the Gold Samurai Ranger, making him the strongest ranger on the team. He controls the element of light, which allows him to move just as fast as it, so that's pretty damn powerful right there, able to attack multiple enemies while looking like he hadn't even moved at all. His Zord, the Light Zord, is honestly a little silly looking, because it's a lantern. But it's still powerful, and he has also been in possession of the Octozord, which is actually a squid, and the Clawzord, which is actually a lobster. There's a lot of weird, fishy, underwater themed stuff with this guy, as he also has the Barracuda Blade, the Barracuda Bite, and razor-sharp barracudas that he would just throw at people during battles. I don't know. I actually have no idea why there's fish-related stuff here. I don't know. I'll never know, but he is really capable with it, so we can't really complain here. When Lord Drakon attacks the Samurai Rangers, Antonio is actually very capable and takes down some of the Ranger sentries really easily. He only gets defeated because he jumps in to save Mia, but he is only depowered and captured. We don't actually know what happens to him after that. Number 6, Yale of Sard. Okay, honestly, I had no idea that a feline is awesome. Okay, so Yale is a cat-like alien from the planet of Sard. Yale was originally the runt of the litter, which actually allowed him to survive when the rest of his family did not. Yale became empowered by the Morphin Grid, which inadvertently caused a massive old cat. And he is a big old cat. He's like yay high, and he's huge. What's interesting is that Yale actually proved to be too strong for these already incredibly powerful Omega Rangers. Yale was eventually depowered and became like a pet for the Omega Rangers. Eventually, Yale comes into contact with the blue Omega Morpher thanks to a mysterious figure, the Blue Emissary. And man, Yale is such a cool looking blue Omega Ranger. His strength and forgiveness make him an excellent addition to the Omega team, but also, he's a big old
At will, this evil Zord first appeared when a green Chaos Crystal became charged with green Chaos energy and opened a portal in the Rangers' command center. Blind, he tore a path through the Power Rangers while absorbing their powers and knocking Billy out. This Zord would go on to fight all 6 of the good guys' Zords at once. He has super speed and moving armor, which Goldar says in issue 9 seems to grow and overlap in a way he has never seen before. This Zord is able to absorb the powers of the Power Rangers by shooting a blue laser out of his mouth and can fire phasers from his hands, which are powerful enough to send its victims flying through walls. It can fire from its mouth that is supposedly powerful enough to kill all 6 Rangers from Kimberly's power bow. So we'll just have to take his word on this one. Once defeated, this armor was appropriated by the Yellow Ranger. Of course, a Zord is only as powerful as its pilot, who turned out to be the evil Lord Drakon, but more on him later.
Number 9, Scorpina. Scorpina is one of my favorite characters in the comics and in the show. She is one of Rita Repulsa's enforcers, similar in rank to Goldar. Scorpina is known in the comics to be extremely deadly and shows great prowess as a fighter. She often fights with a crescent-shaped sword, which can be thrown like a boomerang. Boomerang blade, go! In giant-sized form, however, she becomes even more deadly, turning into a human-scorpion hybrid monster that wields a stinger ponytail and a large claw hand. To me, she's a fan favorite. I'm a fan, and she's one of my favorites anyways, so I think we can count it that way. Scorpina, while generally seen as, just a foot soldier, could be considered more powerful because of her aspirations to rise above her station and gain even more power than Rita Repulsa herself. This is something we see her working towards years into the future in the comics when she appears. When she resurfaces, she reveals her plan to attain more power than Rita by allying herself and paying tribute to Lokar the Terrible. This is also when we get a look at her new giant metal scorpion form, which is even more fierce than her prior form. While she is defeated here, Scorpina is just a great villain who consistently proves herself in fights against the Rangers throughout her character's history.
Number 8. Dane. Dane is an alien bounty hunter, known for his inspired tactics and his sardonic wit. We first met him while he was rotting away in a prison, only to be broken out by agents working for the dreaded Lord Zed. He was hired to destroy the Power Rangers, but went about it in a refreshingly intelligent manner. Rather than immediately going after the team, he studied footage of them battling the villains Squat and Babu so he could analyze how the Rangers managed to defeat their foes. Once he had reviewed all the available footage, he began spying on the team, watching their fights and memorizing all of their moves and their personalities in order to come up with detailed plans on how best to defeat each of them. In their first conflict, Dane managed to quickly and with relative ease defeat the Power Rangers, but chose to leave them alive in order to send a message. He managed to defeat the Rangers again, even when they were in their Zords and when they combined into a Megazord, but was eventually ambushed and captured by the Omega Rangers. He soon escaped from the Omega Rangers base and did battle with the mighty Morphin Power Rangers again, but was severely outnumbered and chose to retreat. He's a powerful foe both for his fighting skills, tactics, and the ability to know when to cut his losses and get out of there.
Number 7. Astronema. I honestly love Astronema's look. Astronema is known as the Princess of Evil or the Princess of Darkness. I wish I was the Princess of Darkness, that's such a cool name. She is the main antagonist in Power Rangers in Space. But while we know her as a villain on this list, she wasn't always evil. In fact, at a young age, Astronema was known by the name instead of Carone, and was the sister of Andros, who would grow up to become the Red Space Ranger. When she was young, Carone was kidnapped and brainwashed by Ecliptor and Dark Spectre. She was raised to become the evil heir to Dark Spectre, who gave her the name of Astronema. In fact, while deep down Astronema was always Carone, she would still work to earn Dark Spectre's favor and would end up succeeding, earning the title as his heir. Before she was an enemy to the Space Rangers, she would also become an enemy to the Prism Rangers and the Omega Rangers, even falsely claiming to have killed the Prism Rangers when, in reality, she really had only killed the Pink Ranger of that team.
Number 6. Psycho Green. This former member of the Supersonic Rangers, Trek, was somewhat of an odd man out on his team, frequently being excluded from missions by the team's leader, Ace. This provided a perfect opportunity for the evil Dark Spectre to get in his head and convince him that his teammates didn't value him and that he should become evil. He drew his fellow Rangers into a trap, but he tried to spare his team's Pink Ranger, essentially telling him, "You've always been cool, Pink Ranger. Don't come to school tomorrow." Unfortunately, the entire team was killed in his trap, and Trek joined Dark Spectre, becoming the very first Psycho Ranger. In 1869, while attempting to break Rita Repulsa out of her moon prison, his ship was shot down and he was presumed dead. In reality, he was placed in hibernation for 100 years until he was awoken by the moon landing. He would go on to crush and kill Jamie Gilmore, the Black Ranger, with a boulder and break Daniel O'Halloran, the Pink Ranger's visor, causing him to die in the vacuum of space. He took on his monster form and chased the Rangers all the way to Rita's palace before the Blue Ranger managed to defeat him by sacrificing himself in an explosion. But even this did not kill the Psycho Green Ranger, as he survived, buried by the debris for decades, and returned to take on the latest generation of Power Rangers.
Number 5. The Death Ranger. The Death Ranger recently had their own one-shot, which came out this past summer, and honestly, I think they're a super cool character. The Death Ranger was once the original Gold Ranger of the Omega Rangers, known as Spark. This original team hailed from the Morphin Master's homeworld of Safe Haven, although Spark was actually an alien from the planet Avadias. Due to being from Avadias, Spark did not understand the concept of death or grieving, as on their planet, people didn't necessarily die. Instead, they would end their living journey before beginning a new one as their consciousness joined a collective referred to as the Legacy. Gold Ranger Spark, as we learned in the one-shot, which also has ties to the Charge to 100 Power Ranger event, would end up betraying their fellow teammates and becoming the Death Ranger. As the Death Ranger, Spark would go on to possess Zane, Jason, and Gale of Zard, becoming the Silver Space Ranger, Red Omega Ranger, and Blue Omega Ranger respectively for a time.
Number 4. Rita Repulsa. Perhaps the Power Rangers' most iconic villain, both in the comics and the original television show, Rita Repulsa was the daughter of Lady Fienna of Ludus and the evil Master Vile. When Fienna learned of Vile's vile nature, she fled before giving birth to Rita. Master Vile tracked them down, killed Fienna, and took Rita for his own, raising her to be evil and cruel, teaching her dark magic. She recruited an alien named Finster, who could create clay sculptures of abominable creatures who Rita would then bring to life to do her bidding. She joined the evil Lord Zedd and took up conquering planets in his name, trying to conquer Earth before being defeated and trapped in a space dumpster by Zordon for 10,000 years, before escaping and prompting Zordon to assemble his team of Power Rangers who fought Rita, preventing her from taking over Earth. Her story in the comics is pretty much the same as it is in the TV show, although she tends to be written much less jokey and over the top in the comics. Like in the show, she is a powerful and dangerous foe, both because of her sorcery, her treachery, and her seemingly endless army of putties.
Number 3, Lord Drakon. Lord Drakon is an alternate evil version of Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger turned White Ranger, from the reality known as the World of the Coinless, where he's neither. He's not a ranger anymore. Here, Tommy stayed loyal to Rita Repulsa after being convinced initially that Rita ruling the world would actually maybe be a good thing. Would it be a good thing? I don't know. As such, he helped her to conquer city after city until they made their final stand against the Power Rangers and Zordon. In this showdown, Tommy faced off with the Red Ranger Jason, who at the time was in the process of being given more power and turned into a new kind of ranger by Zordon. Interrupting this process, the two fought one another, with Tommy stealing Jason's newfound power and emerging triumphant in the end, holding Jason's shattered helmet. While some of the other Rangers would go on in the world to form the Resistance, Jason would not, instead being believed dead, but actually being kept as Lord Drakon's secret prisoner. Once the Rangers and Zordon were defeated, the Earth was conquered, and Lord Drakon had learned pretty much all he could from Rita. He even turned on her, betraying her and killing her so that he alone would rule the world.
Number 2, Lord Zedd. Yet another villain from the TV show who made the jump from the pages of the comics, Lord Zedd is the self-proclaimed Emperor of Evil. He was deformed when he tried to claim the legendary Zeo Crystal for himself. As the crystal was surrounded by a force field that damages evil, his skin was burnt off, giving him his distinctive look. He is Rita Repulsa's boss, who didn't think conquering Earth was worth his time, so he left Rita in charge of the conquest before leaving to take over other systems across the galaxy. When Rita failed to defeat the Power Rangers and conquer Earth, he returned, melted Rita's staff, depowered her, and took over the operation. He was able to create even more powerful putty creatures than Rita, and was able to transform a simple piranha into a giant monster known as Pirantis Head. Rita eventually gave him a love potion and the two were wed, making them the universe's most terrifying and evil power couple.
Number 1, Dark Spectre. Dark Spectre is probably one of the best of the worst when it comes to Power Rangers villains, both in the comics and in the show. Dark Spectre is like one of the main guys. He is an overarching antagonist across various series, including Mighty Morphin, Zeo, Turbo, and even Power Rangers in Space. When it comes to the comics and the shows, he is often portrayed as being a major antagonist. Although despite being known as the Grand Monarch of Evil, he is not my personal favorite villain, to be honest. That honor still stays with villains Rita Repulsa and Ivan Ooze. Classic Ivan Ooze. Hopefully we get to do a list where I gotta talk about him. Also, why is Rita Repulsa so hot in the comics, and is that just me that gets those vibes? Maybe it's just me. Andrew's not saying anything, so that's not giving me a lot of...
It's not just you.
Dark Spectre is also the head of the United Alliance of Evil. Sounds so organized. At one point in the comics, he has his lieutenants recruit other more promising evil fledglings as he searches for someone to become his evil heir. Guy just wants an evil heir, you know what I mean? Isn't that what we all want in life? I would love an evil heir. Astronema proved to be the one he bestowed this honor upon, manipulating her into becoming supremely evil. Seeing her parents as a great threat, he had them killed and lied to Astronema, blaming the Power Rangers, saying that they were the ones responsible for their deaths. Pretty evil.
And coming in at number 10 is the Psycho Rangers. Now I was about to put the Space Rangers here, but then I remembered the Psycho Rangers. The evil princess Astronema created this group of evil rangers to draw on the power of her master, Dark Spectre, and they were designed specifically to hunt down the Power Rangers. Each Psycho Ranger had a specific fighting style unbeatable by the ranger that they were the evil version of, and they were even a serious threat to the Ranger team even without all of their members. The Psycho Rangers were used by Astronema not only to defeat the Power Rangers but also to severely weaken Dark Spectre, whom Astronema was trying to overthrow. But then, these these guys even got monster forms that they turned into if their ranger forms were actually destroyed. They have an embedded second wind perk. That's so cool. The Space Rangers had to team up with the Galaxy Rangers to even take out a powered up version of these guys, and it was still a close fight. In the comics, we get to see the origin of the very first Psycho Ranger, Psycho Green, who was actually the Green Supersonic Ranger before he turned, and he served as the right-hand man for the Dark Spectre himself. Number 9, the Omega Rangers. The Omega Rangers were a small but ancient faction or team that are specifically around to operate in the most dangerous and most remote areas of space, and they're powered by the classical elements of fire, water, earth, and air. Now originally the team was around many millennia ago on the Morphin Master's homeworld of Safe Haven, and they were originally composed of Bledsoe, the Red Fire Ranger, Apophy, the Black Air Ranger, the Purim, Yellow Earth Ranger, Haza, the Blue Water Ranger, and Spark, the Gold Sun Ranger. But Spark turned on his fellow Rangers, being taken over by the possibilities of having death-defying powers. He became the Death Ranger, which, if you've seen our most powerful Ranger video, which you should, is one of the most powerful Rangers out there, even if he's evil. Despite that, the Omega Rangers were able to stop and imprison Spark, and they were also really cool. I really like them, and they're only in the comics, so check them out. Number 8, the Aquitar Rangers. During the 3rd season of Mighty Morphin's Power Rangers, these aliens who come from Aquitans filled in for Earth's original team of Rangers when they were turned into children. And in terms of power, they appeared at least to be equal to Zordon's team, which is absolutely saying something. The other thing is that with a unique group of powers and really cool powerful Zords, this team was able to adequately fill in the gap left by Earth's out-of-commission forces, proving that they were exceptional in their own right, and a team to be vile were. They held their own, and they came back to reappear in the comics, which was so that the Rangers were not just contained to Earth. They basically opened up the whole Power Rangers universe, and that's too cool for school right there. Coming in number 7, SPD. This might be a bit controversial, I'm not too sure. Some people don't like this, some people do. Power Rangers SPD was just a tiny part of Space Patrol Delta, basically an interplanetary police force that has jurisdiction over the whole galaxy. With that kind of a concept, they get points in the power scales for sure. They rely on an impressive amount of highly advanced technology to bring peace and order to the galaxy. For example, giant, exaggerated police vehicles. Super cool. What's really interesting though is that although major conflicts existed between, Doggy Kruger as the Shadow Ranger was strong enough to make up for almost any shortcomings the team might have had. And I haven't even touched on the fact that all the members of the B Squad in Power Rangers SPD, so the ones we actually focus on in the show and the comic, have a set of superpowers that they even continue to possess without their Rangers forms. They may not have been able to show their full potential in the show, but they sure as hell put up a hell of a fight. And also, definitely my favorite season of Power Rangers. That's just me. Number 6, Zeo. They derive their powers from a magic crystal whose power keeps magnifying over time. So that kind of automatically ranks them among the strongest. Theoretically speaking, the Rangers could have relied on the power of the Zeo Crystal to defend Earth for like basically forever. And it would just get stronger and stronger as they went on. But to get real here for a sec, production issues with the actual show meant they kind of had to switch to this weird car style, and it kind of brought everything just down a little bit. But despite that fact, the Zeo Rangers are one of the strongest Ranger teams in existence because of their firepower. They had a huge array of new, interesting, and absolutely wacky and weird, which itself was one of the strongest set of villains any Power Ranger team has faced ever. Number 5, the Super Megaforce. Also a controversial team. But with a name like that, how can they not be powerful? Now before I trigger you, Ranger Love, Force is one of the strongest teams in Ranger history. A team of Rangers that is completely backed up a few we've never seen or heard of before, especially in the comics with the energy manipulating Squadron Rangers. And they even got Zordon's own apprentice as their mentor. How can they not be strong? They're more of an homage to every other team of Rangers, but because of that, they get points for nostalgia on top of their combined power. Coming in number 4 is Mystic Force. Magic. That's all I gotta say. No, I'm kidding. But Mystic Force is technically one of the most powerful Rangers teams ever. Their powers come directly from the Xenotome and ancient elemental magic, and not a lot of teams can say that. These Rangers cast incredibly powerful spells left and right. They wielded the power of really awesome Zords and had what might be the fanciest looking power-ups in Ranger canon with Legend Wolf Warrior, who also joined the team. Also, capes. They have frickin' capes, and that's really cool. Who else has capes? I don't have a cape. I wish I had a cape. I need a cape. Anyways, number 3, Ranger Sentries. I feel as though some people are gonna hate this being put here because they aren't really technically a team. They're more like an army. The Ranger Sentries were essentially an army created by a corrupted and evil version of Tommy Oliver, the infamous and insanely powerful Lord Drakon. In the world of the coinless and alternate reality, Drakon created a whole army of humans who wore mass-produced Ranger armor. The Mastodon Sentries and their super cool black and white costumes acted as like the police force and the bulk of the army in this for the Mastodons. The Green Zeo Sentries were the mobile infantry, and they also had these awesome tank mechs. It was so cool. The Silver Space Sentries were the air support, and they had sweet jetpacks, and everybody loves jetpacks, and energy blasters, so obviously super cool. Then we have the Jungle Fury Rhino Sentries, who were essentially tanks, not like the awesome mechs, but like these big hulking strong guys in massive armor. So cool. There were the Blue Samurai Sentries, and they seemed to be like the melee foot soldiers. As a force of them with the Mastodon Sentries invaded the city of Corinth. We also got these awesome Dino Charge Gold Sentries who had these massive shields and like super heavy firepower. They would make up like the shield wall, and they were just so dope. Next up would be the Sabertooth Sentries, who were like the yellow ones, and they seemed to act as lieutenants. I don't know. I think that's what they do. It wasn't really clear what they do, but they're a step under the Tyrannosaurus Sentries, who are the Red Rangers of the army. And these guys serve as the personal elite guard of Lord Drakon and the other evil forces like Rita Repulsa and Scorpina. That was a lot, I know, but as you might have picked up, each of these class of soldier were based on a ranger from across the Power Rangers universe after Drakon went through and team? That's up to you guys to decide, but I'm gonna say yes. Definitely a team. Just a big team. An army, some could say. Number 2, Time Force Rangers. Coming from the year 3000, the technology available to this team of Rangers almost automatically outmatches any of the other man-made Ranger powers in existence, as does their futuristic military-like training. But, I mean, let's be honest. The most obvious show of power here is their ability to travel through frickin' time. Theoretically, if they broke their oath about ethical time travel, which is boring, nearly any adversary they came up against could be thwarted before they ever rose to power in the first place, or before they were even born. Extremely strong group. Each Ranger's character had a strong sense of conviction to boot, especially Jen, their leader. And the Quantum Ranger? He made our list of most powerful Rangers for a reason. Also, again, they literally travel through time. That's kind of the main thing here. Time travel is super powerful. And in at number 1, it's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm sorry. They fought and teamed up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Attitude, went up against the Witch, Rita Repulsa, the head of an evil empire, Lord Zed, and even Rita's father, Master Vile. All villains who had enormous armies, resources, and raw magical power. As some of the most skilled fighters in the franchise, the MMPR team would jump headfirst into hand-to-hand combat. They had a slew of ever-developing and exponentially more powerful Zords and weapons to summon if the battle called for it. But best of all, if the Rangers were forced to retreat, their tremendous resourcefulness would kick in as they worked together to develop a solution, innovate new technology, or just go grab like a long-lost artifact to use, creating a strength where there was once a weakness. So, like, while other teams may have had better power sources and all that fun, fancy, extra stuff, this team always found a way to adapt, kind of like Batman. But they also have the most experienced group of Rangers, especially when we take their comic book counterparts into consideration. Jason Lee Scott, Zach Taylor, Billiver.
Number 10, Zordon. Zordon of Eltar. He was an intelligent galactic wizard, and he of course is the mentor to the Power Rangers. Now, Bryan Cranston played him in live action, and his story begins thousands of years ago. He witnessed the birth of Rita Repulsa. He actually stood at the side of Rita's mother, Lady Fianna, and Zordon even gifted her a baby rattle and was even willing to protect. He blames himself for failing to protect the universe on his own. So later on, when Rita sought to conquer all these worlds, Zordon was of course against this. so naturally a war broke out. This war lasted thousands of years, and then when Rita started to serve the Great Lord Zed to conquer our planet Earth, they occupied a palace on the moon because that's what you do when you're evil, you make a palace on the moon. While this was happening, Zordon discovered 5 power coins and a map to the Desert of Despair. Rita got the 6th coin, the Dragon Dagger, and the Dragon Zord. And as the war came to a close, Rita used her powers to banish Zordon into a time warp, where he still exists just out of normal space-time. So the only way he can communicate with the outside world is through that energy tube. That's why we just see Bryan Cranston's face, which is good enough for me. He has a great face. So next, he constructed a base of operations known as the Command Center and began assembling the Power Rangers. Number 9, Lord Drakon. He made his first appearance in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 9. He's a supervillain and an evil Power Ranger who controls the Black Dragon. To be an older version of Tommy Oliver. He's actually from an alternate reality where he ruled over a technologically advanced Angel Grove. He was their oppressive ruler who had an army of Ranger sentries in the world of the Coinless. In issue 9, it was revealed that Lord Drakon had been controlling his Black Dragon and was speaking through it as well. So once he achieved his final evolution, Drakon gained the ability to modify the universe. He underestimates his opponents, he's egotistical, and he thinks he's superior to Green Ranger. He made his first appearance in Go-Go Power Rangers issue 1. He's 16 years old, he likes football, pistachios, and bubble wrap. Don't we all? And he has a pretty wild day at school. He's kind of a jock, but he's also quite friendly. He assisted the Rangers on a need-to-know basis. He didn't actually reveal himself to the public until Angel Grove was trapped by Lord Zed. Now his Green Ranger form is different than Lorianne and Tommy's because Matthew has this extra golden trim on his suit as well. It's this glowing white trim that he has on his arms and his legs. Looks really cool. This power was given to him by Grace Sterling through the Dragon Power Coin. So when he finds out about his friends being rules of the Ranger, it's not their fault. He was so upset that he actually stopped dating Kimberly. And then finally, when he wanted to spark that relationship back up, it was too late because Kimberly was already taken by another Ranger to serve under Lord Drakon. Before she escaped, she was brainwashed. She's the leader of the Promethea Rangers, and after the defeat of Drakon, she became the new leader of her world. She restored peace and brought it back to living conditions once Drakon was out of the picture. Now she lost Billy, Jason, and Matthew of her world to the hands of Drakon, so now she opts to work alone in order to protect her friends. The power coin was returned to her, and combined with the new evil energy of the Bow of Darkness, she became the Ranger Slayer. She used her bow mainly in combat, which makes for really exciting action scenes, but she also has these futuristic bombs when she fights, so double combo. Number 6, Jason, Red Ranger. He made his first appearance in issue 13 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Jason Lee Scott was chosen by Zordon to be the Red Ranger. He obtains the Tyrannosaurus Power Coin, Blade Blaster, and Power Sword. Now he used to be a bully like Bulk and Skull, but he changed once he started to take on karate classes. He was determined to be a better person because, well, bullies suck. Now cut to 6 years later, he's now teaching said classes, so he's a quick learner, and also now he's passing on his knowledge. We love growth. Teacher. So Jason is the first to attempt to correct something if it goes south. He always gathers, he's the one Kaya. After the universe went back to normal following the events with Lord Drakon, the alien Kaya got these amazing abilities, these electricity-based powers. Now these powers resulted in the passing of her family, so she left. She actually was literally chased out of her home. And then she found herself with trainee Jason and Zach as one of the Omega Rangers. She was a great fighter and easily ahead of the rest of the team, but those family traumas were just still lurking around her brain. She took out the Blue Emissary and had her scope set next on the Power Rangers. Now the reason she flipped was because she believed that the Power Rangers were just creating another Drakon to go and take over the universe. So she acted out. I mean, more than fair. You were chased out of your village, you had a horrible childhood, it's normal for you to hear. Tommy gets quite a bit of attention in these stories and movies. Now most of us, like myself, picture Ranger as perhaps one of the most notable. See, as the White Ranger, Tommy had a mythical sword to go along with his drop kicks. Now these swords are neat because they obtain the personality of that who is wielding it. You know, they're a bond, they're a weapon bond. The first 2 White Rangers were the leaders of their teams, and believe it or not, once he left the show as a Green Ranger, fun fact. So they used the White Ranger as a mysterious way to bring him back in. It was Tommy's White Ranger who used a single Zord in a fight, whereas others needed to combine their Zords. His would act by itself, how cool is that? And to make the White Ranger more unique, he's immune to the forces of evil. Hallelujah. Number 3, the Psycho Rangers. We're the Psycho Rangers. We're faster than you, we're smarter than you, we're stronger than you, but we're evil. Cool, put that on your resume, it's a great introduction. The Psycho Rangers are the evil versions of the Space Rangers. They were created from the evil Princess Astronema in order to take the power of her master, Dark Spectre. They hunted down the Power Rangers by tracking their energy, voices, and communicator noises. Now these Psycho Rangers are cool because they all have a specific fighting style that's unbeatable to their respective color on the good team. with of course Psycho Red leading the team, the flame monster, Blues was an ice monster, Black was a stone monster, Yellow was a spy battle to Trecheron. He then fell into a pit gravely injured, where he then remained for years. Now eventually Mike Corbett, brother of Leo Corbett, the leader of the Galaxy Rangers, fell in the Lights of Orion. Now he used his Taurizord and battled several times, just desperate for revenge. But he was also an enemy of the Rangers because, well, he was careless with civilians while he was fighting. He was a danger. When the Magna Defender was wounded, his son Zyka came back to him and said that he believed in him to make the right choice. And so then he sacrificed his life. That's right, Magna threw himself into the energy pit to neutralize its energy and save Terra Ventura, and also create a force cage with it as well. He just throws the sword into the ground and bam, it generates this huge cube-shaped barrier around their target. It's pretty cool stuff. Kicking off the list at number 10. Eric Myers. The 6th Ranger of the Time Force Guardians, Eric Myers is a Quantum Ranger. Now in his early days, Eric was a soldier working for the Silver Guardians, which was established by Wes Collins' father in order to protect Silver Hills. See, Wes was kind of hard as a student, and Wes, alongside other snobby students, didn't really have to try hard. He was one of those kids, you know, in one of those schools. So they didn't get along naturally, so Eric refused to take advantage of Wes. He's just doing it himself, right? He wanted to study and get it done his own way, rather than have the rich kid help him. So then he discovered that Wes was the Red Time Force Ranger, and then soon Eric became aware that the Time Force Rangers are looking for the quantum powers. And Eric just happened to get to it first. And then Eric became the Quantum Ranger himself. Now he helped the Rangers from time to time, reluctantly though. And then when Eric was hurt near the end of the season from a Cyclobot, he handed his morpher over to Wes to step up and take over. Now when Eric recovered, Wes gave him back his morpher, and then a new friendship has now begun. So they get along in the end, how nice. When the Rangers left for the future, Wes was left in charge of the Silver Guardians, and his new partner was now his new friend, Eric. Number 9, Jen Scott. The Pink Time Force Ranger had a pretty wild start to her heroic days. Now cut to the year 3000, Jen is now an officer for the Time Force Police, and crime was basically non-existent at this point, except for that pesky Ransik. Now Ransik was arrested at trial with Alex because at the time they were dating. So after Ransik was captured, he proposed to Jen. How lovely was that? No more crime, open bar, let's dance. So she said yes, and all was great, but while transporting Ransik to the cryo prison, the team was attacked. Now right before Ransik escaped to the past, Looper style, they unfortunately killed Alex. So with Alex's final breath, he charged up the team, Jen, Lucas, Trip, and Katie, and they all traveled back to the past to find Ransik. Now Jen got his red chronomorpher and told one and arrived in Silver Hills. But at this point, they needed a Red Ranger, so they went back to Wes Collins, that guy I just mentioned, who just happened to look identical to Alex, which is a fun coincidence. And then Jen became the Pink Time Force Ranger and leader of the team. Number 8, Adam Park. Adam met Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy at first after he saved a baby with his friends. It was pretty epic. What an introduction. So he lived in Stone Canyon, California, but was visiting Angel Grove competing in Team Ninja. See, he was representing Stone Canyon. Now, Lord Zed saw how this dude could kick ass, so he and his 2 friends got kidnapped and put in the Dimension of Despair. The Power Rangers saved the day, but Adam and his friends saw their true identity when Tommy and Kimberly had to remove Billy's helmet after fighting the Serpent of Darkness. So Kimberly and Tommy at this point were like, you know what, we're good friends too. We're gonna also remove our helmets. Let's do it. That's what friends do. So Adam and his friends, Rocky and Aisha, were actually taken to the command center afterwards to meet Zordon. How cool is that? Sworn to secrecy, of course. So down the road, when the Rangers were heading to Switzerland for the World Peace Conference, Adam was picked to take Zach's place as the Black Power Ranger, with Rocky and Aisha taking over Jason and Trini's place as well. Guys, be there for your friends. You might just become a Power Ranger. Who knows? Number 7, Tori Hansen. The blue wind flicks with her words rather than just, you know, kicking people in the neck. She does, however, still train at the Wind Ninja Academy, so if she had to, she could still right in your neck easily. She's a great surfer as she can move faster than the human eye can see, and if she focuses hard enough, she can fight off mental attacks as well. How amazing is that? Surfing, fighting skills, super speed. So to come to no surprise, part of the Lightspeed Rangers, and it all started with a car accident when he was young, as most of these things usually start with a tragedy. Now, this wasn't your usual fender bender either. See, it was Ryan, his sister, and his father, and they were hanging over a cliff at one point. It was super intense, it was crazy. So Ryan was hanging onto his father's shoe, which is so scary, And that's when the spirit of Diabolico showed up and offered a deal. Kind of like Mephisto, just popping up and being like, how can I help? Diabolico would save the child, but then he would raise the kid himself until his 20th birthday. So Ryan fell and his father just had to agree at that point, right? He had no choice. Nothing like rejected him rather than what really happened. And he favored his sister Dana, which wasn't true. She was also a Power Ranger at this point. So now he's becoming evil and he hates the Power Rangers naturally. So now down the road, Diabolical sent Ryan on this mission. The mission was to steal the prototype Dana. Now Captain Mitchell saved the day by reminding Ryan of his childhood where he snapped out of it. So the leader of the Space Rangers, Andros, is pretty unique. He's a human from a colony in space called KO-35, where telekinesis is a thing you can just obtain and have, kind of like in Looper. A lot of similarities to Looper in this one. So after the Turbo Rangers command center was destroyed, they left Earth, and that's when Andros found them. So even in space, you can still have a wild childhood as well. So when Andros was a kid, his sister Corone was kidnapped by Darkonda, put on himself to become the galaxy's first Space Rangers. And they were just given a spaceship. They were given the Astro Mega ship and then 4 other Astromorphers to assemble a squad down the road as well. Inside the ship, Bucky Barnstop. Number 4, Anubis Doggy Kruger. Perhaps one of the most... What a tragic start. So when General Benag came to Earth later on, it brought back SPD Patrol Morpher, which allowed him to become the Shadow Ranger. Number 3, Sydney Drew. Sydney Drew is the SPD Pink Ranger. Now she comes from a rich family and she's kind of spoiled, not gonna lie. She's a model, singer, and she's actually great at fencing because, you know, one way or another, you still have to be a Power Ranger. Now, she's one of the 2 original SPD B Squad members next to Sky and Bridge. Now, on her birthday, she was only looking out for herself. She wanted to just do things for herself, not really include anybody else. And Jack Landers, the Red Ranger, made her get it. You're trying to change character, but it's her birthday. It's one day a year, come on. So she was annoyed until she realized that Jack didn't even have a birthday to begin with. So she changed her ways and made it a 2-for-1 birthday. So she turned her spoiled behavior around, and I mean, honestly, you love to see it. She was the daughter of a Sydney has these iron fists. Well, actually, she can transform into any element. She just needs to touch it. Hence the iron nugget on her belt. Number 2, Cam Wattenby. He's the son of Sensei Kenoe Wattenby, head of the Wind Ninja Academy. So you already know this dude was allowed to become a ninja himself, which always bugged him growing up. As, you know, rightfully so, that would bug me as well. But he did mentor the students during this, so he was part of the team, you know? Wasn't a ninja, but he helped them out, so close enough. Now, after Lathor sucked the academy into the sky, he took 3 students, Shane, Dustin, and Tori, to this underground dojo. Now, his father instructed him to give the students Wind Morphers, and they became the Wind Rangers. Now, his job on the team was to create all these cool gadgets. He was the gadget guy. He was brilliant, so he created power spheres, he created Zords, and other weapons for the team. Now, when his father was captured by the Thunder Rangers, Cam created a force field to protect him. Cam also discovered the missing piece to combine the Thunder Megazord with the Storm Megazord, so this guy's killing it. And finally, number 1, Merrick Balaton. One of the most powerful when it comes to abilities. Now, he used to be a soldier from the land of Animarium thousands of years ago, but then he put on a legendary wolf mask with great powers found at Nazar's. Can't do that. We have to just put you in this tomb. Now, cut to present day, the new Master Org freed Zenaku and hopes to use him against the Rangers, but once a month on the night of a new moon, he would regain his memory. He became the Lunar Wolf Ranger, and he's one of the most powerful, hence why we put him at number 1.
Number 10. The Ranger Sentries. The Ranger Sentries are one of the newer additions to this list, but in such a short time, they have made a massive impression. I mean, they even made their way into the Power Rangers fighting game Battle for the Grid. But for those who know, Lord Draken and are soldiers who are connected to the Morphin Grid with powers Draken stole from Rangers he killed. They look awesome, and they have their own powerful weapons, and were a key part of the Shattered Grid event. And they help Draken take over multiple worlds and kill tons of Rangers and civilians. Number 9, A-Squad. I feel like A-Squad would be probably a bit higher on this list if they were in it more. They were mentioned a lot throughout the season, but they were only in it for like a couple of episodes. They were this famous team of Rangers that were, you know, the best for in the SPD. Even better than the main Rangers of the series, who were the B-Squad. Well, turns out that they were actually just straight up evil and not as perfect as everyone thought. They also had some interesting outfits. Their helmets were, of course, from Power Rangers in Space, but the rest of them was a hybrid of like a Ranger suit and also some high-tech military armor. It was actually really cool. I wish we could have learned more about them and had them in more episodes, but hey, they were still cool in the time they were given. And the story of the SPD, I love the 2017 Power Rangers movie. It honored the original series, but brought its own unique modern spin. Unfortunately, it didn't do as well as they were hoping, so the sequel got scrapped, and now we all know. But we did get to see them fight a Green Ranger, and that was of course Rita Repulsa. Yes, in this version, Rita was actually part of the original Ranger team that was led by Zordon. It was a cool twist. It added a really unique dynamic to the Ranger-Rita rivalry. She was the Green Ranger of the power coins and hide them from her until they could find new Rangers worthy of harnessing their power. Rita kept hers, and once she returns, she uses that coin, and we get to see her harness the Green Ranger power plus her own, and it was pretty awesome. It was cool to see how her suit adapted and got kind of corrupted. She was a great villain, and the ending set up her and her base on the moon. Elizabeth Banks did such a good job, and I would have loved to see where they would have taken her in the sequels. Voices were just scary all on their own. But if you don't remember, let me jog your memory. Evil Jason and Kimberly didn't come from an episode or a comic book. It came from a movie, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie to be exact. Divatox kidnaps and sacrifices them as a part of her plan to bring back Malagor. And the two of them come back as evil Minch. Eventually they were restored back to normal and all is well, but it was still so cool and terrifying to see them take on the Rangers like that. Plus, fans finally got to see Jason in a Power Rangers movie since he wasn't included in the Mighty Morphin movie, which was really sad. Number 6, the Ranger Slayer. Like the Ranger Sentries, the Ranger Slayer comes from the comic series and is a new addition to the Power Rangers canon. The Ranger Slayer is actually Kimberly Hart, who was the original Pink Ranger from an alternate reality. But don't be fooled. She is not a good guy. Well, I mean at first. She was brainwashed into working for Draken and ended up killing other Power Rangers. Her story in that dimension was actually pretty similar to the original, at first. That is until Draken kills some of her teammates and her boyfriend, which makes her try to go and take on him herself. She has an altered suit and possesses the Bow of Darkness, and became known as the Ranger Slayer. The Ranger Slayer is scary, deadly, and one of the coolest things to come out of the Power Rangers comics. Number 5, the Thunder Rangers. Man, let me start off by saying Power Rangers Ninja Storm is seriously one of the best seasons that they have ever done. They have great team, great suit. They also had 2 of the best evil Rangers, Hunter and Blake, who are also known as the Crimson and Navy Thunder Rangers. They were tricked by Lothor, who was the main big bad of the season, into definitely got the upper hand on Shane, Tori, and Dustin, but in the end, realized the truth and eventually became their allies. Their journey was one of the highlights of the season as you understand why they were doing what they were doing. Throw in the fact that they had some of the coolest suits and moments of any evil Rangers, and it just makes for an amazing evil Ranger. Number 4, the White Dino Ranger. Trent Fernandez Mercer, aka the White Dino Ranger. Trent was the adoptive son of the big bad of the season, Mesogog, also known as Tommy's former Anton, so he decided to take him in. Trent eventually comes in contact with the White Dino Gem, which was created by Tommy and Anton, and turns into the White Ranger, which gives him one of the coolest Ranger suits ever. Like seriously, it's in the top 5. The Dino Gem gives him super speed and the ability to camouflage. The gem was tampered with and ended up corrupting him, which is why, of course, Tommy Oliver, who is now known as Dr. Tommy Oliver, since he earned a PhD in paleontology, which is something I never thought would happen. But I mean, in Power Rangers universe, I guess, anything is possible. But back to Trent, he became one of the greatest evil Rangers by not only besting the main 3 down to the best. Like a lot of other evil Rangers, he ends up turning to the good side eventually, but that does not take away from all the mayhem he caused before that point. Number 3, Lord Draken. Okay, so this was tough because Lord Draken could have easily been number 1. And I mean, this just shows you how many good evil Rangers there are. I mean, because of all the things he's done and the fact that he's brand new, which makes it even more impressive. He's Tommy Oliver from an alternate universe, who, after being defeated by Jason, decided to stay evil and went back to Rita. His goal from then on was to not only destroy the Rangers of his world, but every world. He created Ranger Sentries from the powers of the Rangers he killed, and technically he ultimately won by creating his own dimension, although they ended up changing it. But Draken killed so many Rangers and destroyed so many worlds that overall he did accomplish more than any evil Ranger ever, and that's a massive achievement. Plus, Jason David Frank actually got to play him in live action for the Shattered Grade comic event trailer, which was very... Number 2, the Green Ranger. Okay, so I might get a little hate for this, maybe, since a lot of people consider Tommy to be number 1. Because yes, he is awesome, and he almost was number 1. This was really hard. Tommy was the original evil Ranger. He started the trend. Of course, to bring him back, that they did bring him back. He consistently defeated the Rangers in battle. I mean, he even jumped into the Megazord and destroyed them in there. Something you know, once they found out that it was their friend Tommy, it caused even more of a rift because he knew everything about them. There would be no evil Power Rangers without Tommy, and he will always be remembered number 1. the Psycho Rangers. Now, like I said, I know a lot of people would put Tommy as number 1, and rightfully so. But while Tommy started the trend of the evil Rangers, the Psycho not only tormented one Ranger team, but 2. They fought both the Space Rangers and the Lost Galaxy Rangers, where the pink Psycho Ranger was technically responsible for the death of the pink Lost Galaxy Ranger Kendrix, which was the first time a Ranger had actually died in the show's history, which was a massive deal. They were so popular that they even ended up introducing a new Psycho Ranger in the comics, the Green Psycho Ranger, who was, you guessed it, also insanely evil, killing Rangers from the original Mighty Morphin team who went on a mission to the moon in the year 1969. Now, of course, that is during comic continuity and not TV show continuity, but regardless, they changed everything. I mean, they even returned in the new graphic novel Power Rangers: The Psycho Path, which was also amazing. Number 10, Crash and the Creeps. Okay, so this one is pretty different for both kind of monsters, but also Rangers in a way. They were created by Divatox during Power Rangers Turbo. Originally, they were members of Cassie's, the Pink Turbo Rangers band. They are unique in a way because they don't really share the same designs as the Turbo Rangers, or each other for that matter. Whenever they would perform their main song, it would not only mess with the concentration of the Rangers, but a lot of other citizens of Angel Grove as well. They were only in one episode, but because they were so different and unique in regards to other evil Rangers, mainly just because of how they look. Number 9, the Dark Rangers. In Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Lord Zed chose these new bullies at Angel Grove High to become the Dark Rangers, since they basically felt like the city should be theirs anyway. Lord Zed teleports these bullies to the dimension known as Otherworld, and uses the green crystal to transform these bullies into the Dark Rangers. These bullies are sort of like the same counterparts to the original Rangers, even sharing the same first letter of each of their names. But once the Green Rangers is able to eliminate the crystal, it destroys the Dark Rangers and turns them back into people again. However, in their own take on these Dark Rangers, they were created by Lord Zed to turn Rita Repulsa, Squat, Goldar, Finster, and Babu into Dark Rangers. We get Rita as the Red Ranger, Babu as the Black Ranger, Goldar as the Yellow Ranger, Squat as the Blue Ranger, and Finster, who is the Pink Ranger. Each of these new Dark Rangers also have Lord Zed Zed on their suit's chest. Ugh, there's a tongue twister. Lord Zed Zed. Number 8, the Shadow Rangers. In Power Rangers Turbo, we got introduced to the Shadow Rangers. These Shadow Rangers are basically clones of the Turbo Rangers. They almost look identical to the actual Turbo Rangers, but they have gray helmets instead. One of Divatox's monsters, a Shadow Chromite, stole the Rangers' powers when they were morphing. This is when these Shadow Rangers appeared and attacked them. Tommy finds out that these Shadow Rangers were created by refracted light, and to eliminate these enemies, one must defeat them in darkness. He's able to bring these Shadow Rangers into the shadows, no pun intended, and defeat them. They end up defeating the Shadow Chromonite by using the Turbo Megazord to basically block the Shadow Chromonite's life source, eliminating the Shadow Chromonite itself. Number 7, Green Ranger Shredder. So everyone knows the evil villain Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe. But in a special event in Ninja Turtles, Shredder is able to gain access to the Dragon Power Coin, and yeah, I never thought that would happen. And he looks so friggin' cool. Like, check him out, guys. Now, this isn't even the first time we have seen the Power Rangers crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It also happened during Power Rangers in Space. The suit itself is just so amazing, and it's a great combination of what Shredder is used to wearing, but upgraded and meshed with the Green Ranger suit. Definitely wouldn't want to take him on. Number 6, Cyborg Rangers. So in the season of Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, General McKnight, who is the general of the headquarters, tells the Lightspeed Rangers that they are being replaced by the Cyborg Rangers. They feel that they will be able to get the job done much better than the actual Lightspeed Rangers. When the Cyborg Rangers are on a mission, they are fighting villains and are actually winning and doing quite well. But once there's systems, see, this is why we can't trust artificial intelligence. Am I right, guys? Anyways, it alters their systems and makes them turn, you guessed it, evil, trying to do harm instead of trying to protect. The original Lightspeed Rangers are called back in to defeat these Cyborg Rangers and save the day. Number 5, Robo Ranger Tommy. This version of Tommy was a robot that showed up in the 25th anniversary special Dimensions in Danger. He was created by the villain known as Lord Draven, who, sounds very similar to Lord Draken. Maybe they just didn't want to actually use him or couldn't. But anywho, he has the powers of the Black Dino Ranger. He didn't last a very long time though, as he was destroyed by Tommy during the episode, but we still got to see a cool fight, you know, Tommy fighting himself. The Robo Ranger was helping Draven steal powers for his cyborg army. During the battle with Tommy, we were introduced to Tommy's Master Morpher, which was created in the comics, and during the fight, Tommy goes through all of his previous Ranger forms, which was very, very cool to see. And yeah, he eventually destroys Draven and goes about his day. Number 4, the Spirit Rangers. The Spirit Rangers were the evil rangers that showed up during Power Rangers Jungle Fury. They were created by the Phantom Beasts as a way to destroy the Power Rangers. They consist of the Green Elephant Spirit Ranger, the Black Bat Spirit Ranger, and the Blue Shark Spirit Ranger. As the season went on, the Masters controlling them were freed, and the Spirit Rangers could now fight alongside the main Rangers, whenever the Rangers summoned them, of course. They were a cool addition to the Jungle Fury story and had some really cool suits. Honestly, I feel like Jungle Fury is kind of, people forget about it. If you have a chance, you should go back and just watch it. I think you might be pleasantly surprised. Or maybe you won't, and that's okay too. Number 3, Evil Wind Rangers. The Evil Wind Rangers come from the Dino Thunder, Ninja Storm crossover episodes, making them, you know, go evil. But just the main 3, Shane, Tori, and Dustin. Cam then realizes what's happening and he calls in the Dino Rangers for help, along with Hunter and Blake. It was very cool to see the Wind Rangers meet the Dino Rangers and have them duke it out. And for a while, Shane, Tori, and Dustin actually had no problem beating Connor, Ethan, and Kira. They fight unmorphed a lot in this as well, since both teams actually have powers outside of their Ranger forms. Eventually, Cam figures out a way to get them back to normal, but by tricking them into thinking that they're actually getting upgrades, when in reality, it breaks the hold that Lothor has on them. The Wind Rangers then team up with the Dino Rangers and defeat Lothor and Mesogog, and it's really awesome. I mean, that morphing sequence was pretty crazy. Evil, and there are, like, you know, a couple versions. One of them was, you know, Mike, who was Leo's brother from Lost. Talk about when Mike inherited the power. Instead, we were going to focus on the first incarnation. The original Magnet Defender was originally the protector of the Lights of Orion, but ended up losing his way when Scorpius destroyed his planet and killed his son. You know, he even ended up possessing Mike's body at one point. Now, like I said, he's not a straight up evil ranger, but he did fight the Lost Galaxy Rangers, specifically Leo, while he was on a mission of revenge, when he kind of lost his way. And he's just pretty awesome. And any opportunity I get to include him, I'll take it. Because Titanium Ranger. The Titanium Ranger, also known as Ryan Mitchell, was the evil hanging off a cliff, and Captain Mitchell only had a secure grasp on his daughter Dana. Just as Ryan was about to fall, Diabolico appeared and offered to save Ryan, but he would raise Ryan himself, and Captain Mitchell wouldn't see him again until his 20th birthday. Although conflicted about it at first, Captain Mitchell ended up agreeing so that his son could live. Because of this, Ryan grew up with Diabolico and was fed lies that his father abandoned him, and so he ended up hating him. He then broke into the Aqua Base and stole the Titanium Morpher. His mission was to destroy the Rangers, and he was just really powerful. He did become good though in the end and joined the team. Also, fun fact, the type some fans would have liked. Still, it was really, really cool though, and I think they did a great job with the suit. Number 10. He's Tommy Oliver. At this point, I feel like everyone knows this one, but it just had to be on there because it's crucial for his character and his character's motivations. Now, he's not the Tommy Oliver we all know. He's an older one from an alternate reality, and one that wants nothing more than to destroy the Power Rangers. I feel like regardless, Lord Drakkon would have been fairly popular. He established a connection to the Power Rangers unlike anything we have ever seen. I mean, this was a member of their team. Not the one they knew personally, but still, seeing an alternate version of your friend who you knew and you loved would be difficult for anyone, because... Number 9, created the Ranger Slayer. Yep, Lord Drakkon creates the Ranger Slayer. If you don't know, the Ranger Slayer is Kimberly Hart from that alternate Slayer. She controls the Bow of Darkness and became this badass ranger who killed a lot of other Power Rangers. Number 8, caused the biggest battle in Power Rangers history. During his run in the comics, Drakkon started something that will go down in history on Drakkon and his armies. It was legendary and will probably be the biggest. Power Rangers Super Mega Force tried to do something kind of similar by bringing together all the former Ranger teams, but it just didn't work as well. Especially since we only saw a handful of Rangers unmorphed. The rest didn't talk and stayed in their suits the whole time, so it kind of took away from their return. Number 7, his suit. One of the coolest things about Draken is his suit. It's a mix of Tommy's Green Ranger suit and what's in the middle of giving Jason the White Ranger abilities when Draken intervened and took them for himself. And it ended up merging with his own, already Green Ranger power and created this, since the green and white are both very powerful on their own. Put them together and you have this unstoppable duo. Number 6, killed a lot of Power Rangers. This is where he has a lot of other Power Rangers villains beat. But, as the title suggests, he killed a lot of Power Rangers and stole their powers for not only himself, but his sentries. He had a connection to the Morphin Grid like no other Ranger has ever had, because he had the Morphers from all different types of Ranger teams. And the interesting thing was that it turns out that he only needed one Morpher from each team to grant him that specific connection to the Morphin Grid. The rest he just gave to his sentries, which actually is a perfect introduction into Number 5, he created the Ranger Sentries. As I just mentioned, he took powers from different Rangers, and what he didn't keep he gave to his sentries, which were like his Power Ranger soldiers. Now they would take on a similar look to whatever power they took from, so you had some from all different Power Ranger seasons, which was very cool to see. They weren't as powerful as some of the Rangers, but they were close and were skilled enough to take them on in a fight. And there were hundreds of these guys, which makes it even scarier. Imagine seeing an army of them and they were just had all these weapons coming at you. I mean, they would make for a formidable foe, that is for sure. Number 4, chose to stay evil. This is one of the most interesting things about Draken. He, from Rita's spell, he chose to join the Rangers and become a force for good. This Tommy, however, decided to stay evil and wanted nothing more than to destroy the Power Rangers. It was an interesting twist and really changed the way we looked at that version of Tommy. Clearly, he was a damaged guy. I mean, he was put under a spell and forced to be evil by Rita. And people always wondered, what would have happened if he didn't join the Rangers? Well, now we got to see it, and it was done so well. Number 3, consistently got more powerful. When he first got introduced, Lord Draken was already very powerful. But as I said, he was basically a god. He had taken so many Ranger powers that he just basically couldn't be popular for cosplayers. I mean, just Google it and you can see. Plus, it was cool to see how it evolved and changed over time as he took another Ranger power for himself. Number 2, already appeared in live action. As soon as he was introduced, people started saying, when are we going to see Draken in live action? And will Jason David Frank, who plays Tommy, be able to play him? Well, fans got their wish. While promoting the Shattered Grid event, Boom Studios made a teaser trailer for it, and Jason David Frank got the chance to play Draken for real. And fanned him into the TV show and made him the villain for the 25th anniversary, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Regardless, we still got to see Jason David Frank play Lord Draken, and it was awesome. Who knows? I don't know, maybe he will get the chance to play him again one day. Maybe there's gonna be an episode where Draken shows up in the TV. Who knows? It's a possibility. Number 1, he's not the first Lord Draken. This one is like super interesting. During the comics, when Rita was trying to bring Tommy back to her side, she brings up someone that she used to know, named Draken. He was this warrior that conquered his world and was, insanely powerful. Tommy ends up really liking that name because, of course, he ends up taking on and becoming the new Lord Draken. I wonder if soon we will see thing. Number 10. Bridge Carson. Bridge Carson, aka the green SPD Power Ranger, but also the blue SPD Power Ranger and the red SPD Power Ranger. You see, the SPD team has ranks and you can get promoted, and that is exactly what happened to Bridge. Now, SPD is based in the future, in the year 2025, which is kind of crazy because it premiered in 2005. And when it was in 2005, 2025 just seems so far away. But now we're in the year 2020. Can't believe we're that close. But in that future, a lot of the population have certain abilities. So for example, Bridge, along with his Ranger powers, has psychometry, meaning he can see the auras of anyone around him, and started to show that he had other sensory abilities as well. I always liked Bridge because he was kind of this strange and goofy guy, but when it came to his work, he took it very seriously. And it paid off for him since he got promoted twice. Once at the end of the season, and then again when he returned during the Once a Ranger episode during Power Rangers Operation Overdrive, when he showed up as the red SPD Ranger. Bridge even made an appearance in the Soul of the Dragon graphic novel, which was based around an older Tommy Oliver. Number 9, Ziggy Grover. Ziggy Grover, aka Ranger Green, is part of Power Rangers RPM. Power Rangers RPM goes in a different direction for their season, as they are trying to stop world domination from a machine army led by an AI. This villain is actually enslaving all of humanity. When we see Ziggy, he started out by actually taking money from the cartel and using it for a children's orphanage. He has done quite a bit for this orphanage, and after having to serve out a sentence by being an assistant to the Rangers, he ends up actually becoming Ranger Green by having to use the technology on himself to save it from ending up in the enemy's hands. This point out, he didn't really have much experience in combat. Number 8 became the Green Turbo Ranger after Adam and the rest of the original team, had to pass on their powers. When the series begins, Carlos is a little bit of a hothead, and he doesn't take criticism of people. Fortunately, he does grow over the course of the series and becomes a solid Ranger, Ashley and Cassie, even though they could have and most likely would have died without powers. But, of course, they end up meeting Andros, that become the Space Rangers, and that led into one of the best seasons of Power Rangers ever, so it's all good. Number 7, Joel Rawlings. In Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, Joel is the man. Captain Mitchell, who is the leader of the Lightspeed Aqua Base, recruited him to join the Lightspeed Rangers, fall in line and take orders. But as he began to be part of the team and actually see fair weather, and then usually it never worked out, and oh man, Joel was a pretty funny guy. Number 6, Trip. Power Rangers Time Force gave us the introduction of its Green Ranger Trip, who actually isn't even human. That was something that was very different and cool about this season. The Time Force Rangers end up having to go back to the year 2001 after Prisoner escapes to that year. This was such an interesting season that we got introduced to, since they were able to play with time travel in such a cool and interesting way. Trip is shown to have a good heart and as always tries to see the good in people, regardless of what they have done. Since the people from his planet do not lie and try not to hide anything, it makes for some interesting interactions, for sure, with the other Rangers since he is quite trustworthy. Number 5, Rita Repulsa. So, in the Power Rangers movie that came out in 2017, we got introduced to Rita Repulsa as the Green Ranger. It took us back to the Cenozoic era with Zordon as the Red Ranger and Rita as the Green Ranger, who ends up betraying them to use the Zeo Crystal to take over the world. This added aspects of both Zordon and Rita that ended up actually improving the characters and adding this interesting rivalry. This was such a cool and interesting twist on the War of Power Rangers that showed us Power Ranger going to lengths to killing fellow Power Rangers. When she returns in the present day, she's trying to recreate her minion Goldar to find the Zeo Crystal. She was successful in creating Goldar and attacks Angel World with Goldar at her putty, purging herself with Goldar during the battle. In the battle, the Rangers ended up defeating her and Goldar, sending her directly into outer space towards the moon, which was a cool nod to the original series because that's where her base was. I'm still just so disappointed that we're never going to see a sequel to the 2017 film. I really loved it and I wish we could have continued that story. Number 4, Damon Henderson. Damon Henderson, aka the Green Lost Galaxy Ranger. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy is one of my favorite seasons. I just think everything about it works so well. Damon was a mechanic that worked on the Astro Megaship, which of course was introduced during Power Rangers in Space, which right off the bat was a really cool connection to the previous season. The story of a mechanic being thrown into this cosmic adventure is when he becomes one of the most crucial members of the team. I mean, if it wasn't for him, the Rangers may not have survived a lot of situations during the season. I mean, during the first couple episodes when Kai is trying to commandeer the Astro Megaship, he realizes how difficult it is to fly, and Damon comes in. Awesome to see him return during the legendary battle. I just wish he had a little bit more screen time though. Number 3, Cam Watanabe. So in Power Rangers Ninja Storm, we get introduced to Cam, the Sensei's son. Now, Cam doesn't become a Power Ranger right away, and is actually more of just helping, run the Ninja Academy. He actually really wanted to be more of a part of the academy and train, but this is not what, his father wanted for him. At first, he was there to only help the Power Rangers with their, Morphers and Zords. But after the Power Rangers lost he found his mother, who never wanted Cam to train because of how dangerous it really was. They became friends in the past, but Cam never told her who he actually was. When he was explaining the situation about how his mother never wanted to train in the arts and how his father upheld that promise, she told him that if his mother saw him now, she would let him train. And when he was framed in the past by his father's brother, Lothar, the villain of the season, they have a duel with Cam being victorious and getting him banished from the academy for his use of the dark arts. Cam ended up with the samurai amulet, but intended to give it back to his mother. But his time was up in the past, and when he was about to get transported back to the present, his mother told him to keep it.
He then returned to the present and became the Green Samurai Ranger. And he had one of the coolest suits of the zoo. Adam Park. Adam started off as the Black Mighty Morphin Ranger, which is still probably his most famous because that's usually what he returns as. But he was also 2 different Green Rangers took over for him. When Adam joined the Power Rangers family, I don't think anyone expected him to be as awesome as he was. But Adam became a fan favorite and one of the longest serving Power Rangers ever. He got solid storylines and proved himself countless times as one of the team's most skilled and reliable Rangers. I always thought that he would have become a Red Ranger one day because he was great at leading the Operation Overdrive. Number 1, Tommy Oliver. He rocketed. Eventually he joined the team, but due to not having a ton of footage to use of him, he sometimes had to be mysteriously absent, like for a random karate practice, or his powers being depleted, or Tommy leaving his communicator in his gym bag, stuff like that. Regardless, when he was there, he was awesome, and had so many cool moments. I mean, to this day, him calling the Dragonzord with the Dragon Dagger is just still amazing. In the time he was given, he made a big impression. But it also helps that he had the best Green Ranger suit of all time. And I feel like that's probably not going to change, but who knows, you know, it could. I still would have loved to see how they would have altered the Green Ranger suit for Tommy if the 2017 movie got a sequel. I'm still impressed about that. Number 10, Shelby Watkins. Shelby Watkins made her debut in Power Rangers Dino Charge as the Dino Charge Pink Ranger. Before Shelby became a Power Ranger, she was not allowed, so she does what anyone would do. Go anyway, and she snuck into who is an assistant. But having made contact with the Energems, they saved them from freezing to death, and that is how Shelby ended up becoming the Pink Dino Charge Ranger. Number 9, Dana Mitchell. So in Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, we got the introduction of Dana Mitchell, Pink Lightspeed Rescue Ranger. Lightspeed Rescue aired in 2000. 20 years ago. Oh my god, I feel old. She is smart and open-minded and knows the value of leadership since her father, Captain Mitchell, is the leader of the Lightspeed Aqua Base. She was also crucial to bringing the Lightspeed Power Rangers together as a team. She also has a brother, who was introduced later in the season, who becomes the Titanium Ranger. I guess being a Power Ranger runs in the family. Dana also made an appearance in Power Rangers Time Force and Power Rangers Super Mega Force. Number 8, Karone. Karone is the Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger. Well, the second one. She took over for Kendrix, who we will talk more about later. Karone has had a very interesting journey during Power Rangers. For starters, she made her debut in Power Rangers the Red Space Ranger. That whole season was him kind of looking for his sister, and it was eventually she became good and ended up sticking around for a while. Years later, she became the Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger. Karone also returned during the legendary battle during Power Rangers Super Mega Force. Number 7, Catherine Hillard. Catherine, aka the Pink Mighty Morphin Ranger, and the Pink Sierra Ranger, and the Pink Turbo Ranger. As of right now, Cat is the only Pink Ranger to be on 3 separate Ranger teams, which is pretty cool. Cat didn't join the Rangers until Season 3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. She took over for Kimberly and ended up staying for, well, a long time. Although she started off as a threat to the Rangers as she was brainwashed by Rita, but she eventually overcame it and ended up joining the team later on, which was a big deal. Of course, she ends up passing on her turbo powers to Cassie, who we will, spoiler alert, 5th anniversary episode, Dimensions in Danger. Also, in that episode, it was hinted that her and Tommy are still a couple, and that Catherine is the mother of Tommy's son, JJ. However, in the comic, Soul of the Dragon, it is directly stated, and in Dimensions of Danger, the episode, it took a lot of inspiration from that comic. Like the Master Morpher, JJ, and Tommy and Catherine are seen holding hands as they leave the episode. Number 6, Kimberly Hart. Kimberly Hart is the original Pink Power Ranger. She is the one that a lot of people instantly think of when they hear the words Pink Ranger. When the series began, Kimberly was this popular girl at school who was a bit spoiled and not really someone you would expect to be a Power Ranger. But Kimberly grows over the course of the series and becomes a solid Ranger. Kimberly has taken a lot of monsters on by herself, saving her friends in the process. In season, Billy, Trini, Zach, and Jason. Kimberly fights him and ends up freeing her friends by shooting Terror Toad with her power bow right in his throat. It was a sad moment when Kimberly decided to leave the team, but we did end up seeing her later on in Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. She wasn't a Ranger, but she fought them when she got put under a spell and turned evil along with Jason. But that was the last we saw of her. Well, technically, I mean in official canon, she was said to be her in person since 1997. Number 5, the Pink Psycho Ranger. The Psycho Rangers are so freaking scary. To this day, I think they are still the best evil Rangers. Although, it's so close between them and Draken. Oh man, I just keep going back and forth. But the Psycho Pink Ranger might be the most famous out of all of them, because she's the one that technically killed the Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger, which was the first time a Ranger had died in Power Rangers canon. The Pink Psycho Ranger was based off of Cassie and created by Astronema and the Dark Spectre. That's why they are so hard to beat. Even in the little time they are given, they made such a big impression, and that is why they even returned during Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Number 4, Kendrix Morgan. Kendrix, the first Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger. We talked about Carone earlier on this list, who ended up taking over for her, but Kendrix was the first Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger. She worked on the Terra Venture as a science officer and ended up being one of the people to lift out the Quasar Saber and become a Lost Galaxy Ranger. Kendrix was smart, thoughtful, and very brave during her time as a Power Ranger. Also, she technically made history as the first Ranger to be killed off on the show. She sacrificed herself to save a fellow Ranger. The reason for this was because the actress who played her was actually diagnosed with leukemia and had to leave the show for treatment. She was still credited for every successful, and she is now leukemia free, which is great. Hopefully, she returns one day, and because we all could use a little more Kendrix, because she's awesome. Number 3, Cassie Chan. Cassie Chan is the Pink Turbo Ranger and the Pink Space Ranger. Cassie took over for Catherine, who we talked about earlier, as the Pink Turbo Ranger. Cassie was chosen by Cat because of her bravery. Even when she didn't have powers, they were still willing to go into the unknown reaches of space to save Zordon, who had been kidnapped. That's when she met Andros and became the Pink Space Ranger. Cassie returned during Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and during the legendary battle during Power Rangers Super Megaforce. Number 2, the Ranger Slayer. So we talked about the original Kimberly Hart, but now let's talk about one from an alternate reality. The Ranger Slayer. This is an older version of Kimberly from the comics, and one that was evil for a little bit and worked with Lord Draken, but not just because she wanted to. Her story in the comics starts out exactly like Kimberly from the show. Everything from the whole thing. But in that reality, Laura Draken kills Jason and Billy. The love of her life is also dead, so basically she decides to take on Draken by herself because she has nothing off and she starts killing other Rangers. She has an altered suit and possesses the Bow of Darkness and became known as the Ranger Slayer. She has become such a fan favorite and had a major role in Shattered Grid and the Beyond the Grid arc. The Ranger Slayer is also a playable character in the Battle for the Grid video game. She is probably one of the best ones there. Her powers are perfect. Jen isn't just the best Pink Ranger of all time, but just one of the best Rangers of all time. She is just this badass who leads the Time Force team and doesn't take no for an answer. Even after her fiance died, which she saw firsthand, she still managed to lead the team into the past and take down Ransik, which shows how just determined she was. She even took on Ransik in the finale when she was hurt and unmorphed, which she would have been instantly killed. Jen also played a massive role in the Shattered Grid comic event, and is now the mentor to the Hyperforce Rangers, which is the live-action tabletop role-playing show. You can watch all the episodes online. Number 10, Red Ranger. That honor goes to Charlie, who led the evil A-Squad team during Power Rangers SPD, but Lauren is the first good female Red Ranger. And it was a really big deal. Lauren takes over as the Red Samurai Ranger from her brother Jaden, and let's just say some of her fellow Rangers aren't too happy about it. But in the short time she's given, Lauren proves just how good of a leader she really is, even outdoing her own brother. She had to prove it. The cool thing was that in the Boom comic series during Shattered Grid event, she was given a lot more to do, and was crucial in stopping Draken, and helped turn things back to the console game Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. Number 9, Andros. I feel like a lot of people might be a little bit angry that Andros is, and had the added benefit of being in one of the best seasons, Power Rangers in Space. Andros was from a space colony, and while tracking down some leads, bumped into the Turbo Ranger. He trusts them all, and that is one of his biggest faults. His lack of trust in anyone. While he does end up overcoming it, it did hurt him a lot during the season. But he has a very compelling arc throughout the whole thing. To save his sister. This is his central conflict that started all the way back in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The whole thing felt kind of like a series finale for the Power Rangers in general, but as we all know, it ended up continuing, and we got some great seasons after Zordon. And by doing so, save his sister, but also turn a lot of other villains good, including Rita and Lord Zed. It was a big deal, and Andros made the difficult decision to do it. Connor is probably one of the most unlikable Red Rangers. At first. I mean, he was this rude jock who constantly disrespected other people. I mean, mainly women. He was also a massive bully towards fellow Ranger Ethan. And for the longest time, he wasn't even really leading his own team. Tommy was, as their mentor and later as the Black Dino Ranger. But as the season went on, Connor evolved and became a real leader, and learned to respect other people. I mean, near the beginning, he wanted to ditch being a Power Ranger and become a soccer star. He decided to stay with the Rangers and become a better person instead. And, in the end, he did end up getting the best of both worlds. Well, kind of. I mean, he didn't become the soccer player he always wanted to be, but he was a ranger and he ended up opening soccer camps for people all around the world, which was a nice touch and a good end to his arc. That kind of growth was nice to see, and making everyone hate him at the beginning was a very unique and interesting way to start off this Red Ranger's journey. But it worked. Number 7, Wes Collins. Wes, the Red Time Force Ranger. The interesting thing is, even though Wes was the Red Ranger, he wasn't the leader of his team. It was actually Jen, the Pink Ranger, who led it. And it actually worked out. Wes was not ready to be a leader when he started. I mean, he was just kind of this spoiled rich kid who got money from his father. But after Jen's fiance, Alex, dies, also played by Jason Font, Wes becomes the new Time Force Red Ranger. Throughout the course of the season, Wes becomes a hero, and his team becomes his family. He was willing to sacrifice, and they kind of create a new destiny together. In the end, when he stays in the past, he becomes the leader of the Silver Guardians, a police organization created by his father, and gets Eric, aka the Quantum Ranger, to be his second in command. Wes also returned in the 25th anniversary. I mean, he has come a long way from just being some spoiled rich kid. Number 6, Shane Clark. Shane is the Red Wind Ranger from Power Rangers Ninja Storm. He was a member of the Wind Ninja Academy, but at the beginning, not one of its best students. Shane, Dustin, and Tori were all constantly late for class and lost to become the Red Wind Ranger. Even though he turned out to be one of the last choices for the role, he became her, and he just loved skateboarding. He grew a lot over the course of the season from a guy who, he has super speed, stealth, and can fly in a sense. Shane was a guy that wanted to prove that he could be more, not only to himself, but to his family, specifically his older brother, who thought Shane was just a screw-up and would never make anything of himself. Well, over the course of the season, he not only helped defeat Lothor, but also proved to himself, his team, and his family that he was all. As a firefighter, the reason he became one was because when he was a kid, he was saved by another Power Rangers. He is a by-the-book kind of guy and doesn't really like to stray from that, which makes him stand out from other Red Rangers who usually will be a bit of, wild cards. Carter is also one that will never back down from a fight. He stopped Queen Ben-Shira by throwing her into the Shadow World and was one of the Rangers to return for not only the Forever Red special, but also the Legendary Battle. Carter may not be a Ranger who has changed that much over the years, but he is a dedicated leader and someone who will always be there for his team and the citizens. Jay Johnson. TJ wasn't the first Red Turbo Ranger, but he is probably the most well-known Red Turbo Ranger. You see, Tommy was the first one to take on those powers, but he eventually passed the power on to TJ at one point during the season. A lot of people also know TJ as the Blue Space Ranger, which, he became right after. Honestly, in the short time he was given, TJ made a really big impression, and a lot of fans wish he could have been the Red Ranger longer. And imagine being the guy that had to succeed Tommy. That would have been nerve-wracking since Tommy was so popular, but TJ managed to do it, and still went on to be one of the more popular Rangers around. To start off, he saved Tommy before he even was a Ranger. He didn't hesitate to put his own life on the line to save someone he didn't even know, which is why Tommy ended up choosing him to take the power. When he became the Red Turbo Ranger, he constantly put his life on the line to protect his team. Near the end of the season, he sacrifices the Zords and almost his own life to stop Divatox. Even when the power chamber was being destroyed, TJ made sure that he wouldn't leave Alpha behind, even though he could. Some fans might be angry that Tommy isn't number 1, and I get that. And while it might be up for debate on the greatest Rangers of all time list, he is more known for his other colors. But that doesn't take away from how good of a Red Ranger he was. Now, Tommy was 2 Red Rangers, the Red Zeo Ranger and the Red Turbo Ranger. But he wasn't a Turbo Ranger for very long, and he passes on to TJ, who we just talked about earlier. But even before becoming the Red Ranger at Zeo, because he started out as this evil Ranger outcast and ended up working his way up and leading multiple Ranger teams. He even semi-led the Dino Rangers in Dino Thunder. He's courageous, selfless, and cares about his team. Heck, he was the one to bring all the Red Rangers together about everyone else more than himself. I mean, he even revealed himself as the Red Zeo Ranger to save his brother David, which put himself in grave danger, but he did it because he wanted to make sure he was safe no matter the cost to his own life. And that is a true leader. Number 2, Leo Corbin. Leo has one of the most interesting Red Ranger origins of all time. I mean, he wasn't even supposed to be one. His brother Mike was. You see, Mike was the one that pulled the red Quasar Saber from the stone. not Leo. But during the battle, when the whole world is turning into stone, Mike sacrifices his life and passes the sword onto his little brother, Leo. Everyone thought it was a mistake because Leo was seen kind of as like a screw-up, but Leo decides to take on the mantle and ends up proving them all wrong and becoming one of the best Red Rangers in the show's history. He started off as this impulsive, leap before looking kind of type and grew into a leader that the rest of the Rangers trusted. Whereas a lot of other Red Rangers start off as pretty good leaders, Leo grew into the role gradually as the season went on. And it was really cool to see. He was also the one to defeat Trakeena at the end of the season. Leo's story is one of the best, and even though he wasn't the Red Ranger the team wanted, he was the Red Ranger the team needed. Number 1, Jason Lee Scott, the original Red Ranger. Jason started it all, and to this day is still the best Red Ranger out there. He is this fearless leader and will never give up, no matter what. He led his team through many battles and was the one to take down one of their greatest foes, the Green Ranger. He always looked out for his team and was always putting them in front of himself. He even taught free karate classes at Earth, but the new Boom comic series has added a lot of new stories for him as the Red Ranger. During the Shattered Grid event, he was the one that led every single Power Ranger in history in the fight against Lord Drakkon. No other Red Ranger could have done that. And now he's been a Red Ranger more than once, because in the comics he is now the Red Omega Ranger. Jason is the first and the greatest Red Ranger of them all, and that is something that will never change. Some cool Rangers, but overall there are a lot of things that could have been done a lot better. Orion is the Silver Megaforce Ranger, and the reason he's on here is because he can harness not only his own powers, but the powers of every 6th Ranger ever. And he could do it all at the same time. I mean, that automatically makes him one of the most powerful Rangers around. In most cases, not all, the 6th Ranger of any team is usually considered to be one of the most powerful. So, having that power is a really big advantage for him. Number 9, Adam Park, the Black Mighty Morphin Ranger, the Green Zeo Ranger, and the Green Turbo Ranger. I feel like some people might automatically overlook Adam, especially because he came in as a replacement during Mighty Morphin, but he has shown time and time again why he is not only one of the best Power Rangers, but also one of the strongest. Not only did he become 3 different Rangers, but he is also dangerous and painful, but Adam did it to save Carlos, the Black Space Ranger, even though it could have killed him. It eventually got repaired, and Adam even returned during Operation Overdrive, leading a team of legendary Power Rangers. He had big shoes to fill, and when he came in, everyone wanted to hate all the replacements. But Adam proved everyone wrong, and became one of the coolest and most powerful Rangers. Number 8, Jen Scott. In every season of Power Rangers, the Red is always the leader. Well, in Time Force, it was actually a little bit different. Jen, the Pink Ranger, led the team, and honestly, it makes total sense. She has the most experience when it comes down to it, and she can make all the difficult choices. She not only protects the world of the future, but also the past. She leads her team, no idea what he was getting into when he joined. Even in the final battle against Ransik, all the other Rangers are on the ground injured, and Jen manages to muster enough energy to get back up and take on Ransik even without morphing. Like, come on, that is seriously impressive. Number 7, Leo Corbett. Leo is the Red Lost Galaxy Ranger, and the cool thing about him is that he wasn't even supposed to be the Red Ranger. His brother Mike was. But when his brother is about to die, he becomes one of the most powerful Rangers, but one of the greatest Red Rangers ever. A lot of people might have put Mike on this list instead of Leo because he went on to become the Magna Defender, but Leo has proven why he is more powerful time and time again. Not only did he overcome all the odds by becoming the Red Ranger, he overcame his impulsive nature to leap before looking and ended up Eric Myers, Eric the Quantum Ranger. During Power Rangers Time Force, the Rangers were all looking for the quantum power because of how powerful it was. Eric ended up finding it, and he on multiple occasions, but he also fought against Ransik. As the Quantum Ranger, he also commanded returned to help all the other Red Rangers during the Forever Red crossover special. Number 5, the Ranger Slayer. The Ranger Slayer comes from the Boom comic series and introduced us to Kimberly Hart, the original Pink Ranger, but from an alternate reality. And oh man, she was awesome. She has an altered suit, and she was brainwashed into working for Drakkon and killing other Rangers. Her story starts out the same way as the original Kimberly, but starts to change once Drakkon kills the Jason and Billy of her world. Add to the fact that the love of her life, Matthew Cook, ended up getting killed, she kind of snapped and ended up taking Drakkon on herself. She destroyed so many of his sentries, but eventually was taken down and mind controlled to work for him.
She now possesses the Bow of Darkness and became known as the Ranger Slayer. She's killed multiple Rangers since then, and ultimately she did come back to the side of good and help them defeat him. This version of Kimberly is slightly older and has a lot more experience. I mean, she is just one of the coolest new additions to the Power Rangers canon. Number 4, Shadow Ranger. He ran the whole SPD, Space Patrol Delta, unit on Earth before actually joining the team later on. He was technically already powerful without his suit, but when he became the Shadow Ranger, it took his powers to a whole new level. I mean, he took on what was basically an army of Crybots by himself, and he didn't even get hit. Like, come on, that's pretty crazy. I mean, he didn't even have help while he was doing it. He did it all on his own. Add to the fact that he has a really cool costume, and you have not only the strongest SPD Ranger, but just one of the strongest Rangers in general. He has also become super popular. As of the writing of this list, he's the only SPD Ranger to appear in the video game Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. Coolest and most popular additions to the Power Rangers mythology. What Boom Studios and Kyle Higgins did with him was amazing. And while yes, he technically possessed so many Ranger powers and would be considered to be the most powerful in a sense, he was defeated. But that doesn't take away from how amazing he is. So if you don't know, Lord Drakkon is Tommy Oliver from an alternate reality. Basically, his story was the same up until he was defeated by Jason. In this reality, instead of joining the Rangers, he left. Rita found out Zordon was giving Jason the White Ranger power, but Drakkon intervened and took that power for himself, merging along with the one he already had. And because of that, that gave him a seriously badass costume. His mission from then on was to destroy all the Rangers from every dimension and stealing powers along the way. I won't give too much away, but in his quest to defeat the Rangers, he started the event known as Shattered Grid, which brought together every Ranger team ever to stop him. Number 2, Tommy Oliver. Tommy. Oh man, one of the cool things about Tommy is that he has been so many different Rangers that fans. He was the Green Mighty Morphin Ranger, the Mighty Morphin White Ranger, he was the Green Mighty Morphin Ranger, the White Mighty Morphin Ranger, the Red Zeo Ranger, the Red Turbo Ranger, and the Black Dino Ranger. His most famous and most powerful form is definitely the Green Ranger. He was the very first evil 6th Ranger to be introduced. And he made it Rita made him for the sole purpose of destroying them. But he did get defeated and eventually joined their side. He then continued to move up and lead multiple Ranger teams. He even helped create the Dino Rangers in Power Rangers Dino Thunder. He helped defeat Drakkon in Shattered Grid, and it was revealed in both the comics and TV show that he now possesses a Master Morpher, which is the first of his kind, which allows him to transform into any of his Ranger forms. Usually when a Ranger becomes a new Ranger, they lose access to their old Morpher. Sometimes. The odd times they'll always get it back, but this way he can morph into any form at any given. And number 1, Jason Lee Scott. The original Red Ranger. The original Red Ranger. Jason has shown time and time again why he is the most powerful Ranger. In the show, he was always the one going up against the biggest villains, including Tommy, who he ended up defeating by himself. He took on Goldar without powers in Season 1 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. He then went on to become the Gold Ranger during Power Rangers Zeo. He got those powers temporarily from Trey of Triforia, who was injured and split himself into 3 forms, and he was too weak to use the Gold Ranger powers, so he passed them on to Jason. But most recently, he was the Red Omega Ranger, which was introduced in the comics. In Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, Jason, Trini, and Zach left for a peace conference and were replaced. But in the comic, it reveals that they actually went off to become the Omega Rangers and fight greater threats, even in space. He has proven himself not only to be the strongest Ranger, but also the strongest leader. No one leads a team like him, and no matter how bad things get, he never gave up. And if you need any more proof, he was the Ranger that led, and he also gave the most epic speech during that time. He was also one of the main ones to lead the Red Rangers in Forever Red. Jason is the ultimate Ranger.
Number 10, Ryan Mitchell. Ryan is the Titanium Ranger from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. Now, there was a lot of build-up about the Titanium Ranger because of how powerful those powers are. Even Carter tried to wield it and couldn't. Ryan is the son of Captain Mitchell, and as I mentioned in another video, his father and sister were all involved in a car accident. They were hanging off a cliff, and Captain Mitchell only had a secure grasp on his daughter. And just as Ryan was about to fall, Diabolico appeared and offered to save Ryan, but he would raise Ryan himself, and Captain Mitchell wouldn't see him again until he was about 20 years old. Of course, the captain agreed, and then Ryan grew up with Diabolico and was fed all of these lies about his father and how he abandoned him. And then he eventually broke into the Aqua Base and stole the Titanium Morpher. and his mission was to destroy the Power Rangers. And as is the case with a lot of evil Rangers, he became good in the end and joined the team. Ryan is also very unique because he has no Super Sentai counterpart. The suit was an American creation, which is cool because the suit itself is pretty awesome, and showed how far Power Rangers has come because every season started filming more and more of their own footage. Of course, they still use Sentai footage, but they do a lot more of their own now. Number 9, Katie Walker. Let me start off by saying, I love Time Force. The whole season was just so good and gave us so many memorable moments, but also just memorable Rangers. I already mentioned 2 of them on part 1 of the list. Now I get to talk about Katie, and don't be surprised if there's another Time Force character somewhere on this list as well when she's morphed as the yellow Time Force Ranger, but she also has enhanced strength as well. Without it, the reason she has these powers is because of genetic engineering. She is able to lift concrete debris with ease, and when they teamed up with the Wild Force Rangers, she beat Danny, who of course is the Black Wild Force Ranger, in an arm wrestle easily, which fans thought was a really cool and funny moment. Katie never backed down from a fight and was crucial in taking down the season's big bad, Rancic. Number 8, RJ. Robert James, but better known as RJ, is the Wolf Ranger or Purple Ranger from Power Rangers Jungle Fury. He is probably one of the craziest and coolest Rangers around. I mean, for one, his fighting style is unlike anything Power Rangers has done before, and that's also probably why he was the first main Jungle Fury Ranger to be playable in the new fighting game Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. He's actually one of the best characters in that game, villain of the season as well. But RJ, as a whole, is just one of the most unique. He was the mentor to the main 3 Rangers of the season, Casey, Lily, and Theo, and he also owned Jungle Karma Pizza, where the main 3 worked, but also used as their main command center. RJ had a really big job when he was chosen to help stop Daishi, and was crucial in preparing the Rangers for that incoming threat. Number 7, Wes Collins. Wes, the Red Time Force Ranger. Like I mentioned earlier, another member of the Time Force team made their way onto this list, further cementing them as one of the best. But back to Wes, he's just all around a very strong Ranger. The crazy thing is that he just started off as, some rich kid's son who ended up becoming the Red Power Ranger. Now, he wasn't technically the leader of the team, as most Red Rangers are, that was Jen. But Wes probably wouldn't have been ready right away anyway. He grew as of the Silver Guardians. Even during the battle with Rancic, Wes was one of the only ones to cause major damage to him with his battleizer, which also looked just so cool. Wes showed how he was not only strong physically, but mentally, because getting thrown into a time-traveling superhero team without any real experience would have been hard on anyone. But he pulled it off, and he became a fan-favorite Ranger. I mean, he has returned multiple times for multiple anniversary events. Number 6, Tori Hansen. Tori comes from, in my opinion, one of the greatest seasons of Power Rangers ever, Ninja Storm. Now, all of the Ninja Storm Rangers are powerful, but there are a few reasons why Tori might be considered to be slightly stronger. Firstly, her water abilities are incredibly powerful. As we all know, water can be such a powerful weapon in a lot of different situations. I mean, not only can she make tidal waves or just manipulate it to her will, she can also use it to track things, as she did when she was sent to locate the Turtle Mace Power Sphere. She is also a great fighter and was able to hold her own against multiple villains by herself. On top of all that, she was one of the Rangers that was brought back by the Centennial Knight to protect the world when the Overdrive Rangers lost their powers. They have been called the Retro Rangers and were made up of Rangers from multiple seasons. And it was a big deal that she was chosen to be one of those Rangers to come back and protect the world. Number 5, Carter Grayson. Oh, good old Carter. I mean, he's just a cool Ranger. Not only is he a great guy, I mean, he was a firefighter before he became a Ranger, so he was already saving lives for a very long time. And then the man he idolized, Captain Mitchell, who was the reason he became a firefighter, since he saved Carter when he was a kid, asks him to lead the Power Rangers as the Red Lightspeed Ranger. He is a grunt on his own and basically won, and he helped defeat Queen Benchira by throwing her into the Shadow World. He even took on the Titanium Ranger, who was also, as we know, very, very powerful. As I mentioned in my Red Ranger video, Carter is a very by-the-books kind of guy, and while that sometimes hurts him, it has really turned him into one of the most powerful Rangers of all time. Number 4, TJ Johnson. TJ had such a difficult task when he joined the Power Rangers. I mean, he was the guy that had to replace Tommy Oliver, and that would have been hard for anyone to do. Luckily, TJ pulled it off, and became not one, but 2 different Power Rangers, the Red Turbo Ranger and the Blue Space Ranger. TJ has shown time and time again why he is one of the strongest. Not only in strength, but by his sheer force of will, and across the galaxy was a massive leap that not everyone would have been able to take, but he did it. He was also a crucial part of 2 Ranger teams. TJ has also returned numerous... Number 3, Andros. Let me start off by saying, I think Andros has one of, if not the coolest intro for a Red Ranger ever. I mean, he goes undercover during this massive villain party that featured numerous villains from various seasons of Power Rangers. I mean, it had Lord Zed, Rita, Divatox, Goldar, Astronema, and many more. Dark Spectre was also around, who mysteriously looks a lot like Malagor from Turbo. I always wondered about that. I think they just used the same costume and just kind of slightly altered it, but I like to think that they were just brothers or something, not that they just reused the same costume. But back to my main point. Andros is there undercover, and although he is caught, he doesn't give up, and he fights. That would take a lot of courage to do that. I mean, going into a room full of the galaxy's greatest villains, he does it and he survives. Plus, he took on the Psycho Rangers, and he was the guy that destroyed Zordon, which was a massive deal and basically ended the 6-season-long arc of Power Rangers. Andros had a ton of memorable moments and even ended up coming back for Forever Red. Hopefully, since he's still technically an active Ranger, he will return one day again. Number 2. If there was a top 10 Ranger suit list, Trent's would most definitely be on there. I mean, it's just so freaking cool. All of Dino Thunder's suits were, for that matter. But, okay, back to the main point. Trent is the adopted son of the season's big bad, Mesogog. He found the White Dino Gem, which was corrupted, and because of that, he became evil. Although the cool thing about him is that he wasn't just taking orders from Mesogog like a lot of other evil Rangers would have. He was just good and joined the Dino Rangers. He is one of their most valuable assets. I mean, he beat Tommy in a fight, and Tommy is one of the greatest Rangers around. He also has super speed and can camouflage himself. Trent also returned to the show recently during the show's 25th anniversary episode, Dimensions in Danger. Unfortunately, he didn't have a lot to do in it, but it was just still cool to see him return. Number 1, the Psycho Rangers. I probably should have included them on the first list. That was my bad. I was trying to focus more on non-evil Rangers, but I did include Draken. So I mean, I kind of messed up there because Draken and Psycho Rangers both would have been on the first list. So that was my fault. The Psycho Rangers definitely deserve this spot and would have been near the top on the first list. I mean, they were my pick for the best evil Rangers ever on my other list. But okay, let's talk about them because they're just amazing. The Psycho Rangers made their first appearance during Power Rangers in Space and made a brief but very memorable return during Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. There are 6 of them overall: the red, pink, blue, black, yellow, and green, who was recently introduced in the comics and killed a lot of Rangers. They have amazing suits. Space Rangers did defeat them, but not easily. And to this day, they remain one of the scariest villains in Power Rangers history. I mean, the Pink Psycho Ranger was responsible for the death of the Pink Lost Galaxy Ranger Kendrix.